Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Greetings, party squirrels. Also, huge shout out to official who's first in the chat this fine Monday eve. How are y'all doing? It is a bazillion degrees here, very humid and hot, but I'm just glad it's not raining because I freaking hate the rain. Official says I'll behave, YouTube, I promise. I don't care if you behave or not, but YouTube has its own rules that I have no bearing over. Waiting on Heather. Heather, yeah. Also, Twiz. Oh, I need to text. I need to send him a special text for a special Twiz. I mean, it's just special text alert to Twiz. Excellent. Twiz lost his beard oil, and then he subsequently found his beard oil. So that's the story on the beard oil. So I have an interesting thought that I wanted to do for this live stream. So Lori Vallow Daybell sentencing in Arizona, right, was unique. I didn't even watch the entire thing. I think there was what was going on. There were other things going on that day. Anyway, what I happened to put it on live while I was like doing stuff at work, like filing stuff. And it was literally right at the part where she was going to start speaking. So I heard her and I heard Judge Boreski, and I was like, oh my God, like this is, I was planning on covering it, right? It's very special. But I thought it would be interesting to do the Idaho and Arizona connection. So there's a number of avenues that I think are interesting here, which is Lori Vallow's statements made at sentencing in Idaho for the Idaho trial versus in Arizona. They're completely different. So then you also have Judge Boyce here in Idaho, right? And what he says to her here in Idaho versus what Judge Boreski says to her in Arizona and how they handle it. And then we're going to be comparing basically Lori to Lori and see how Judge Boyce reacts to her in Idaho, see how Judge Boreski reacts to her in Arizona, and comparing Lori to Lori and judge to judge and all that. But then at the very end, we're going to watch as far as Bryan Kohberger's sentencing, which I haven't covered any of. I know everyone's seen it covered, I'm sure, a bazillion times. We're going to just simply watch Judge Hippler's statement, because I think there's some interesting things here that I want to talk about. And it's fascinating, I think. So anyway, that's the plan for tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to resume with going through the Moscow Police Department reports, which, again, I know everybody's covering, but I've not seen that much coverage of it, to be honest. I'm kind of avoiding it because I prefer to read things and bring my own thoughts, to it versus so anyway, in other words, I'm kind of like no spoilers for myself, right? So I've not really watched any other coverage of it. Unless I'm catching something in passing, like, for example, Kane reading it, and then I'm like just, hanging out in the chat or whatever. But anyways, so yeah, we will be resuming that tomorrow, and we'll be picking up with document number 25 and going through it with, what I find interesting or noteworthy, and it will probably be different than what you guys have heard, or there might be some of the same. But anyway, again, I'm just sort of coming at it from a fresh perspective that doesn't have any other, context for it, because I know a lot of you guys have read ahead. I haven't read ahead. So anyway, going little by little in, in chronological order. That's the word, chronological. So, you were spamming my links. What links? What links? So anyway, hopefully, I'm sure we will have some other squirrel friends joining us. I know there's a lot of people who are live right now, but none of them are, first of all, none of them have the squirrel crew, right? And I don't think anybody, one thing I will say is I don't think anybody has actually, that I've seen, not that it matters one way or another, but the idea that I had for this live stream, I don't think anybody's actually done. And I think that there's some interesting points for discussion that, again, there's an overlap here. That's why I added this to both playlists. There's an overlap here between Lori Vallow and also Brian Kober, maybe not necessarily Brian Kober, but the sentencing proceeding, and then the Idaho and Arizona connection. So official says, that's what I love about you. Well, thank you for that. And I love you back. So, okay. So we will jump right on in. So this is from what year? 2023. Jesus. So we're going to watch this, what Lori says at her sentencing in Idaho, which is, shocking. And I will just say again, her Arizona statement is equally shocking, but completely fucking different. So, all right.
All right, Ms. Vallow, before I impose sentence, if you choose, you may address the court. This is known as the right of allocution, which permits you to make a statement on your own behalf or present any information in mitigation of the punishment for the crimes you've committed. And let me inquire at this time, do you wish to address this court? All right, very well, you may make your statement.
Here we go. Okay, sorry. One thing I want to say real quick. Remember, so another thing that was different. So in her Idaho trial, right? She was completely silent. We didn't hear a peep from her. She had defense attorneys, right? In other words, we hadn't heard from her. Okay. The last time we had heard from Lori before she made this statement at sentencing was what? I think when she was like arrested, like with Nate Eaton, like videotaping her like on the tarmac in Hawaii type thing. And so we had not heard her speak. We'd not heard anything from her in a really long ass time, right? What was that, 2019 when they arrested her? So like 4 years. We'd not heard from her. And she didn't say a word during her trial unless it was like a yes or a no. And in the meantime, prior to this trial, right, there'd been issues pending with like potential competency issues. Remember, she was at one point, everything was put on hold while they evaluated her for like 9 months to decide whether or not she was competent and what have you. And so it was really kind of like, we really, at this point, I'm just remembering it now, like had no idea what to expect from her, right? Because it's like, okay, we knew what she was like before she got arrested. And then she had that whole thing where is she competent or not? And we know that the bar for that is extremely high for whether the courts will even assess that, right? And like 9 months is a long ass time to like be assessing that. And then they come back, they find her competent. And if I recall correctly, it was up in the air. It was like at first they didn't, and then they did. But anyway, and then of course, as you all know, death penalty was taken off the table because the state was precluded because of the discovery stuff. So this was a big deal. We had no idea at this point in time what to expect from her. We didn't even know if she was going to speak or not. It's so funny because like right now with what we've all seen in Arizona, it's like, of course she's going to speak. But this is what's so interesting because it was a very different point in time here where we just hadn't heard 4 years of silence, right? And like what's been going on with her mental state and all this. And so no one had really any idea what to expect. So I just wanted to set the scene because we're all now very familiar with a new kind of Lori, the Arizona Lori, completely different Lori. And so just going back in time to 2023, and it was in the early spring of 2023 where this occurred, and it was just a very different situation. So there you go.
I would like to start by quoting John from the New Testament in the Bible. In John chapter 8, verse 7, Jesus says, "He that is without sin."
All right. Starting out strong with a Bible verse from the New Testament. And I will also say, I of course followed this trial, but I didn't cover it. I don't even know that I was covering, I don't know that I was actually covering cases or trials at the time, actually. I can't remember because I feel like if I was, I would have covered this. So I have not actually commented on this. This is my first time commenting on it. And honestly, I haven't listened to it since it happened. So this is really interesting for me as well, because I'm like, holy shit, like I remember the gist of it, and I remember being really grossed out and defended and all the things. But anyway, so this will be interesting to go and react to this 2.5 years later. Hi, Shelley.
I would like to start by quoting John from the New Testament in the Bible. In John chapter 8, verse 7, Jesus says, "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." Then in verse 15, Jesus says, "Ye judge after the flesh, I judge no man. And yet if I judge, my judgment is true." Jesus knows me.
Here we go.
And Jesus understands me.
Oh my God.
I mourn with all of you who mourn, my children and Tammy. Jesus Christ knows the truth of what happened here.
Notice that he's taking notes, by the way, guys, Judge Boyce.
Jesus Christ knows that no one was murdered in this case. Accidental deaths happen. Suicides happen. Fatal side effects from medications happen.
So now we get an idea of where she's going to go with this, where she says fatal side effects from medications happen. I remember hearing this again. It's like, wow, it's all coming back to me. It's like, what is she going to try to suggest here happened to the kids? Like this is her theory that she, or her narrative, that with obviously nothing to support it and everything to the contrary, that she's going to be offering. Buckle up, guys.
I have a different perspective in life because in 2002, when I was pregnant with Tylee, I died in the hospital while in.
Let's hear that again. Oh my God.
I have a different perspective in life because in 2002, when I was pregnant with Tylee, I died in the hospital.
You have to have some sort of nerve to sit here after being convicted of a triple homicide. And this is just the start of her convictions, right? As y'all know, triple homicide. You have to have a lot of nerve to sit there as a living person that we are all seeing and literally say, I died. Like I died, like not, I thought I died, or I almost died, or I had, like I died, like as if, okay. It's shocking, guys.
In labor with her. They tried to stop my labor.
Okay. So one thing that's going to be interesting as a theme for this one, I'm remembering, is there's this whole thing of blaming Tylee and her being the martyr, and it's disgusting and offensive. So it's not just, she takes it a step further. It's not just she died, right? She's sitting right there, but she died due to being in labor with Tylee. Okay.
They put me on the table and they put something in my IV, and I felt my spirit falling to the floor. I was standing near my pregnant body, watching the doctors try to revive me, which took them a few minutes. In that time, my sister Stacy was standing to my left. I turned to hug her. For anyone who doesn't know, her sister Stacy is deceased. So she's basically saying that she was seeing all her, or well, at least one, I'm sure there'll be more, deceased relatives, okay? And was surprised that her spirit was as tangible as a physical body, because I knew I was in spirit and she was in spirit. She said she needed to show me some things, and we went to heaven. Great. I later returned to my body. Because of this,
she had a little trip to heaven and came back, is what she's saying.
Experience, I have access to heaven and the spirit world. Since then, I have.
Now, I also want to say, I think this is in a way a little love note to Chad. And here's what I mean by that. Because they're still fucking married, right? And we know that Lori in this trial had the opportunity to throw Chad under the bus. He wasn't nearly as significant in terms of the Idaho trials, right? But in this, like any defense attorney, right, the strategy here would be throw Chad under the bus. And she refused to do it. Now, Chad had no qualms about throwing Lori under the bus, and his trial was after hers. So she went first. She refused to throw Chad under the bus. In fact, she got all upset when at one point her defense attorney made a little joke about Chad's books and said something like Chad's stupid books, and she got really upset. It was a whole thing. And was like mad at him for that. That was as close as he could get to saying anything negative about Chad, let alone throwing him under the bus, right? And again, Chad took the complete opposite strategy, throw Lori under the bus. So at this point, again, this is before Chad's trial. I think this is a little love note to Chad because they can't communicate, right? And to my understanding, they still can't communicate physically. Although I think Lori says something like they do it, whatever the fuck, whatever. She makes something up, but like they can't actually communicate with each other. And so anyway, the reason I say that is because what she's describing is this near-death experience thing, which, of course, people are familiar with that term, but of course, within the little cult thing that they tried to start and failed miserably at, and a subsection of LDS, the near-death experience, or the NDEs, was like a whole thing. We've deep dove this a whole bunch. It's all on the same Lori playlist. When we were watching her first trial in Arizona, whenever there was downtime, we actually went back and we deep dove this with going back and watching all the Julie Rowe, and we watched a lot of stuff. We really went through it. We listened to Chad's speech the day that they met. Anyway, if you wanted to be in their little club, right? And for their little club, as in the like 4 of them to like approve of you, you really had to be in the near death experience club, the NDE club. That's how you really got the brownie points. And so, and of course, like it's all BS, right? With these people. And Lori had never claimed to have an NDE, but Chad did. Chad claimed to have, I think, 2 or 3 NDEs. And they were the basis for which he was able to say, I have special powers, right? It's like, because he's like what he was saying, Chad paraphrasing, because he had these NDEs, his veil was lifted, right? And he could see into the spirit world. And that's how he had these special gifts by which people should then trust him and do what he says, right? Now, Lori had never made such a claim, but she's making such a claim here, which is interesting. So that's why we're going to listen to it again. I think this is a little love note of her to Chad, because they can't communicate. And this is like her, does that make sense? Oh, and there's Twiz. Where's Lori? Lori is sitting at council table right here between her attorneys.
Was in spirit. She said she needed to show me some things, and we went to heaven. I later returned to my body. Because of this experience, I have access to heaven and the spirit world. Since then, I have had many communications from people now living in heaven.
Again, interesting that she was on she got into Chad's, okay, Chad approved of her back then, right? Like, and she was the one that never had to claim that the NDEs. But it's like now that like they've been separated and haven't been able to communicate and all this, and they're both being tried for murder. Now she's adding this on, right? It's almost as if she still wants to prove herself to Chad. Like she feels like she needs to like step up the game a little bit, maybe because she's, not looking her best or whatever. And it's like, oh, by the way, like also now she's adding this on, knowing that it's something that Chad especially would appreciate. It's wild. Anyway, okay.
Including my children, Tylee Ashlyn and Joshua Jackson, my sisters, Stacy and Lolly, my aunts and my uncles, and my grandparents. I have had many communications with Jesus Christ, the Savior of this world, and our heavenly parents. I've had many angelic visitors have come and communicated with me and even manifested themselves to me. Because of these communications, I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world.
Okay. There's not going to be a whole lot that is similar between this statement and then the one she gives in Arizona that we're going to get to. But I want you guys to pay attention to this. Happy and busy. Happy and busy. Okay? Happy and busy.
Because of my communications with my friend Tammy Daybell, I know that she is also very happy and extremely busy. I have always mourned the loss of my loved ones, and I have lost many in this mortal world. However, I know them more than most people. I know where they are now and what they're doing. I know how wonderful heaven is, and I'm homesick for it every single day. I know we all lived in heaven before we were born on earth, and we were all adult spirits in the heavenly realm. We chose to come to earth as mortals. Heaven is more wonderful than you can possibly imagine. I do not fear death, but I look forward to it. I did not.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, would you maybe not have maybe you would have asked for them to keep the death penalty? I don't know. But also, so she's got a theme here. Her theme for this one is really focused on religion. And it's going to be quite, again, a stark difference when we get to Arizona.
I want to return to my body when I was out of it. Even though my son Colby, who I adored more than anything, was only 6 years old at the time, and I was about to give birth to this new baby girl that I wanted so badly. I was a young mother, and you would think I wouldn't want to leave my children, but as I stood in heaven, I did not want to go back. I thought they would be fine without me because I was peaceful and I was happy and I was home. But then I was told by Jesus that I needed to go back and complete things that I had covenanted or promised to do before I was born. This caused me a lot of distress because I knew heaven was my real home and I only wanted to be there. I was free from pain, emotional and physical. But then I was shown how I would help my children and others in the future. So ultimately, I did agree.
This whole thing. She's like, I died, I went to heaven, and Jesus sent me back so I could help my children. It's just beyond, right? Help your children. Help your children.
To go back to my body. Tylee has visited me. She is happy and very busy.
busy.
Tylee is free now from all the pains of her life.
So Lori did her a favor, sounds like.
Tylee suffered horrible physical pain her whole life.
Yep. Yep. So Lori, I mean, she's not going to take responsibility, right? But essentially, regardless of who she's going to end up blaming it on, the gist of it is Tylee was put out of her misery, and whoever you find responsible is someone you should be thanking, I guess.
I sat with Tylee in the hospital year after year after year.
And now we get to the part where she's a martyr.
While she screamed in pain when the morphine wasn't even enough to take away the pain of her pancreatitis. I sat there while she cried, and I held back her hair while she threw up. And I'm the only.
I have to just say that there's stories out here that are that they're not just stories. I mean, like, for example, from Kay and Larry Woodcock. Okay. And actually, we do know, sorry, let me backtrack. We also know, because it came out in the Arizona trial, right, that Lori was like medicating or poisoning some of Charles's, like, what was it, food or drinks or something. Anyway, there's a lot of stories out there that are, again, they're not just stories, they're like actually descriptions that are valid of Lori having a long time of like poisoning certain people. And a lot of people that are privy to this, and I would agree, think that Tylee's health issues were due to long-term poisoning by Lori. Kind of like what do they call it? It used to be called Munchausen syndrome by proxy, and now it's called factitious disorder imposed on another. Like, and this is, when I say this, it's going to make sense when you hear what she's saying. I'm going to back it up a second, because basically, okay, the whole premise being keep Tylee sick, make Tylee sick, keep Tylee sick, so then you can be the hero mom, right? So then what is Lori going to do? Try to claim credit for being the hero mom, but also be the martyr because she had to deal with sick Tylee all the time. It's like creating a problem that only you can solve so that you look good in the eyes of whoever the fuck. That's what this really is going to have a tone of, in my opinion. And also, I would say that in terms of Alex, her brother's death, you know, and it being natural causes. I mean, why do people resort to poisons, guys, right? And we know that right now, weirdly, there's like at least one trial that we know of that has to do with people poisoning, like people with their poisons, right? And then you've got Brian Walsh, or who was it? Not Brian Walsh. I can't remember. Anyways, I feel like there's been an overlap with a number of different cases where there's like poisons involved, but like you've got the Colorado dentist dude at the very least. But you know, because they can go undetected, right? And I think that that's easier to happen if it's long-term versus like a lethal dose. And so what you have with somebody like Tylee is she was just always really sick and there was never really an explanation for it. But then there's stories, again, with family members and whatnot, like where they feel like they were poisoned to eating the food that she made them and whatnot. And then you look at somebody like Alex, where it's like natural causes. I think it was like he dropped dead of a heart attack, right? Natural causes, but I don't know. You know, the timing of that is very suspicious. And if he had been poisoned long-term, little by little, it might be that whatever the thing is not enough to detect, but also we know that there's some that are more detectable than others. And did they test for it, right? The thing about these poisons is you have to test for the specific one a lot of the times. And anyway, there's so many suspicious deaths surrounding Lori that that there's not even been criminal charges brought for, right? She had what? I'm trying to fucking remember. 2 husbands die before Charles, I think. Was it 1 or 2? And then you have the sister. So death follows her wherever she goes. And like by the time she finally got charged with her first slew of murders, there were a number already of suspicious deaths in the family. And anyway, so it is just all that to say, think about this and keep this in mind as you hear how she's using this whole thing with Tylee for a number of reasons. 1, to make her seem like a great mom. 2, to be like, I'm a martyr, feel sorry for me, but also praise me. And 3, to try to justify murdering her, although she's not claiming, she's not taking that responsibility, but And then there's also this whole twisted thing about the NDE and visiting them in heaven and they're happy and busy. So there's a lot of elements here going on. Joe Ryan, yes, thank you. Was there another one before him? I can't remember though, but thank you for that. And also thank you so much for the super chat. Shelly, also Miss Mojo's Rising, saying, I know that Lori Vallow inflicted Tally's pain fingers. Yeah. That is definitely a thing. So let's keep that in mind. Factitious disorder imposed on another. It's that, but there's like, it goes beyond that. But yeah, let's just keep this.
After a year, while she screamed in pain when the morphine wasn't even enough to take away the pain of her pancreatitis. I sat there while she cried and I held back her hair while she threw up. And I am the only person on this earth.
She's crying for herself, guys. She's crying for herself. She didn't cry talking about Tylee's issues. She starts crying saying, I'm the only person on this earth. Oh.
And I held back her hair while she threw up. And I am the only person on this earth who knows how much Tylee suffered in her life. She had pain every single day. She never felt good. Her body did not work right. And I don't know if that was from complications from me dying while she was being born or something else, but she had a very difficult life.
Are you talking about being the ultimate quote unquote martyr, right? I died to give birth to you. I mean, it's not, we know it's not possible, obviously, but like, that's her story. It's like, it goes above and beyond. It's not just, I took care of you when you were sick, you were, blah, 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 whatever, as a child. It's like, let's start out with being born. Let's start out with your birth. Oh, I died to give birth to you. Like, what the, dude.
She was sexually abused by her own biological father since she was 3 years old, and she was forced by family court to go visit him for 10 years against her will. I fought for her.
Nothing to
in court.
That.
I protected her. I tried to protect her with my whole life. I tried to protect her. I worried about her every single day. Tylee had to get her GED because she couldn't go to school every day because she never felt good. She felt sick. Nobody knows this because Tylee, like myself, tries to put on a good front, tries to be a happy person, tries to have hope in life, tries to know that she's here for a purpose and that she has an eternal purpose to be on this earth. But I never stopped worrying about her. One of the times that Tylee came to me as a spirit after she died, she commanded me and she said to me, stop worrying, Mom. We are fine.
Ugh.
She knows how I worry and how I miss her.
Disgusting.
The first time JJ visited me after he passed away, he put his arm around me and he said to me, you didn't do anything wrong, Mom. I love you. And I know you loved me every minute of my life. JJ, Joshua Jackson, was an adult spirit. And he was very, very tall when he put his arm around me.
Oh my God.
He is busy. He is engaged.
Busy.
He has jobs that he does there. And he is happy where he is. His life was short, but JJ's life was meaningful. JJ was a wonderful person and touched the lives of everyone. And I adored him every minute of his life. My eternal friend, Tammy Daybell, has visited me on several occasions.
And, and the next level of audacity here, right? When she starts talking about Tammy, the nerve of it all.
She came to bring me peace and comfort. And I know that she is extremely busy helping her family, especially her children and grandchildren. And I have a great love for Tammy.
Oh, God.
My beautiful children, Tylee Ashlyn and Joshua Jackson, rest safely this day in the arms of Jesus. My wonderful friend, Tammy Daybell, rests safely this day in the arms of Jesus. And I look forward to the day when we are all reunited and I too will rest with them in the arms of my Jesus.
Okay, now we're going to hear. So what is Judge Boyce going to say to her?
All right, Ms. Vallow, thank you for your comments to the court.
Can you imagine what it must take for someone to thank her for that? Thank you for your comments to the court. He must have had to practice that ahead of time. Amazing.
Let me ask you at this time, Ms. Vallow, are you fully satisfied with the representation you've received from your attorneys throughout this case?
Yes.
Thank you.
We all know later on, she's like, well, no one can do it better than I can. Anyways.
All right, the court will conclude then with my own review of the matter and then pronounce sentence. Ms. Vallow, based on the jury's verdict of guilty in this case, it is the judgment of this court that you're guilty of the following counts of the amended indictment. Count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan and grand theft by deception. Count 2, first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan. Count 3, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow and grand theft by deception. Count 4, first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow. Count 5, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell. And count 7, grand theft. Carefully reviewed the record of this case, beginning with your prior criminal history. Very notably, you're 50 years old. These are the first criminal convictions I've ever had. I will note, however, in addition to these convictions, I have 2 additional conspiracy to commit first-degree murder cases pending in Arizona. And it's somewhat incredible in this case that seeing you've gone from no criminal history in your life, now having been convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and you continue to face more additional counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in another state. I've looked at the recommendations in the pre-sentence investigation report. It ultimately recommends a prison sentence, stating, quote, incarceration under the custody of the Idaho Board of Correction. Normally, the court would have some additional information to rely on in fashioning its sentence, including the benefit of recommendations based on a gain evaluation, substance abuse report, mental health review, other reports. However,
He's referencing the pre-sentencing reports, but she declined.
elected not to cooperate with the pre-sentence investigation. As I would note on page 23 of the pre-sentence investigation report, it states, quote, Lori Vallow Daybell intends to remain silent during the pre-sentence investigation process.
So what's so funny is she was like, she consented to it. She didn't decline it. She consented to it. And then when they went to go do it, she apparently just like sat there and didn't say anything, like the way a toddler would when they're being like, when it's like, okay, tell me blah, blah, and then it's like a contest who can stare at the clock for longest and wear them down. That's what this was with her. She did that like a child would, where she didn't speak and she just sat there in silence, like looking at the clock or whatever. And then eventually they gave up.
She has the packet, but does not intend to answer any questions of evaluators or investigators.
Mm-hmm.
No attempts were made to complete the court-ordered screenings due to her refusal. I'm advising you that that was your choice to not cooperate in the pre-sentence investigation, but it left me without some additional information that potentially could have been mitigating in your case.
Mm-hmm.
And as I proceed with the sentencing, I'll note those deficiencies in the information I normally would have in a pre-sentence investigation report. As has been mentioned by both sides here, the court has to consider certain sentencing objectives when I sentence somebody, and these are set out in cases including State versus Toohill, which is a Court of Appeals case, 103 Idaho 565, and it's been adopted by our Supreme Court as well. And I have to consider for main objectives, number 1, the protection of society, which is the primary objective. 2, deterrence of the individual and public generally. 3, possibility of rehabilitation. And 4, punishment or retribution for wrongdoing. That case states, moreover, it's clear as a matter of policy in Idaho, the primary consideration is the good order and protection of society.
I will just note that I think things could have gone a little bit differently. I mean, I don't know if the result would have been different, but in terms of just the general tone, right? Had Brian Koberger, right? Because this is Ada County, right? Or yeah, Ada County. So had Brian Koberger been after the change of venue, had he ended up with Judge Boyce, it would have been the tone would have been a lot different than with Judge Hippler. And again, we're going to get to compare these side by side with a brief interlude of Arizona in between. So
all other factors must be subservient to that end. I've also reviewed and considered the criteria set forth in an Idaho statute 1925-21 on the question of whether or not you should be confined to prison and to what extent. And that statute sets out a variety of factors I have to consider in weighing whether a long prison term here would be appropriate. Some of the attorneys cited already to some of the provisions of that statute, and again, it talks about the primary consideration of the protection of society, and also talks about the impact on the victim. The possibility of risk reduction through rehabilitation and deterrence are also to be considered. There are some factors laid out in that statute that are not necessarily controlling, but weigh in favor against either imprisonment, or in this case where imprisonment is required, an extensive imprisonment term. Some of those factors under Part 2 of this statute is the defendant's criminal conduct neither caused nor threatened harm, which is clearly not the case here.
yeah,
That the defendant did not contemplate the conduct would cause or threaten harm. Again, that would not apply here. The defendant's criminogenic needs indicate the defendant will benefit from supervision and treatment in the community. That's unavailable, as community treatment can't occur with a minimum prison sentence required here. Another factor, were there substantial grounds tending to excuse or justify the defendant's criminal conduct, though failing to establish a defense. I don't find those apply given the facts of this case. Other factors, the victim of the defendant's criminal conduct induced or facilitated the commission of the crime. That did not occur here. Another part talks about compensation, which I don't find would be appropriate here other than on the grand theft charge. Part G, the defendant has no history of prior delinquency or criminal activity or has led a law-abiding life for a substantial period of time before the commission of the present crime. That is the single most mitigating factor I see in this case. Again, it's unbelievable that at your age you have no prior criminal history and now you sit here convicted of the most serious of charges. I also have to consider whether the criminal conduct was the result of circumstances unlikely to recur. Based on the evidence in this case, and in particular, considering the statement you just made to the court, I find it weighs against me finding in mitigation for that factor. And then finally, the character and attitudes of the defendant indicate the commission of another crime is unlikely or the defendant demonstrates amenability to treatment. So those are the mitigating factors. Then in aggravation, we have more factors to consider. Is there
now he's going to get to the aggravating factors.
An undue risk that during the period of a suspended sentence or probation, the defendant would commit another crime harmful to another person? Would a lesser sentence depreciate the seriousness of the defendant's crime? Will imprisonment provide appropriate punishment and deterrent to the defendant? Will imprisonment provide an appropriate deterrent for other persons in the community? And a factor that would not apply here is the defendant a multiple offender or professional criminal.
Kane.
I don't have an LSI score, which is one value I can look at to help determine whether or not you'd be likely to reoffend. I don't have that because you wouldn't cooperate with the report.
She wouldn't cooperate.
So considering here that you've lived a law-abiding life and for a long time.
This is interesting. So he's weighing out. He's like, you've lived a law-abiding life. Like, it's like, but then on the other hand, you just slaughtered a fuck ton of people. So,
You were obviously a good mother, sister, daughter, and friend to many people. I have to take that into account. You've served a very long time of local jail, over 1,200 days, and the report is you've been a great inmate, never caused a problem for anyone in the jail. And you should be commended for that. And that also shows that you are capable of that. I believe your counsel, when they tell me you're an intelligent person, up until all these
right
events,
off the bat, do you guys hear what he's doing? He's finding things about her beyond, he already mentioned the mitigating factors. He's finding things about her to, he's finding something good to say about her, right? Let me back this up. He doesn't have to do this, right? And keep this in mind, right?
the report is you've been a great inmate, never caused a problem for anyone in the jail.
She's been a good inmate.
Commended for that. And that also
She should be commended.
shows that you are capable of that. I believe your counsel, when they tell me you're an intelligent person.
And I guess I didn't go back all the way, but prior to that, he was also like, you were a good sister, mother, or no, he didn't say mother. I guess he said sister and friend. So good sister and friend, good inmate. And then her counsel says she's intelligent.
Up until all these events began to transpire, you've achieved goals in your life. You've done important things in your life. And I'd note that despite some of the comments here today, I have found that during my interactions with you throughout this long case, including your trial, you've been respectful of the court.
And she's been respectful of the court. So he's just listed a number of compliments, if you will, right? Okay.
Do we know what this beeping is that keeps going off?
There's some sort of...
We'll next consider, and I think it must be considered in mitigation, that you do have mental health issues. I've dealt with those throughout the context of this case where there were commitment proceedings. I've reviewed those reports and have that personal information from having gone through the determinations of whether or not you were competent or fit to stand trial. The most current diagnosis the court has is from Dr. Watson, and from February of this year states you suffer from, and I'll quote, delusional disorder, mixed type with bizarre content and hyper-religiosity, continuous and unspecified personality disorder with histrionic and narcissistic features.
Let's hear that again, because I think that's spot fucking on, guys. Let's hear that again.
And I'll quote, delusional disorder, mixed type.
Delusional disorder, mixed type.
With bizarre content and hyper-religiosity.
With bizarre content. Accurate. With bizarre content and hyper-religiosity.
religiosity, continuous and unspecified personality disorder
Continuous and unspecified personality. She really did reinvent the wheel, didn't she? She really did. Continuous and unspecified person. Also, this is a slew of diagnoses, right?
with histrionic and narcissistic
With
features.
histrionic and narcissistic features. One more time, and I'm not going to interrupt it because this is nice to hear, right? I mean, this really is accurate. There's a lot of things that people can call her, and I'm not saying those are wrong, but this is, I think, far and away the most accurate.
You suffer from, and I'll quote, delusional disorder, mixed type with bizarre content and hyper-religiosity, continuous and unspecified personality disorder with histrionic and narcissistic features. So obviously a very complex diagnosis that's been made here.
I guarantee you that when they made that, they're like, yeah, we've never made a diagnosis like this before. This is a new one.
Whether or not that can or how it would be treated, I think by all accounts is unknown at this time. I've reviewed your personal history, including statements from your own immediate family members, and it's clear that something radically changed in you that led you to where you are today. In a statement made in the pre-sentence investigation report, your mother stated it perhaps best and said that you are not now, quote, the person she knew. The record in this case, including all the evidence I observed during the jury trial, indicates that if it wasn't already occurring, that this relationship with the co-defendant seemed to be a catalyst for the change. At this point, I'll note that I will not be making comments on any other co-defendants in this case, as your co-defendant is currently presumed innocent and awaiting trial. In sum, there are significant mitigating factors the court has to consider here when I consider you and your life as a whole, and that does make the case difficult. Typically, when I see somebody to be sentenced and they don't have a prior criminal history, they're given opportunities to first prove themselves on probation or avoid a lengthy term of incarceration. However, of course, some crimes are so serious that even with mitigation, there is no other reasonable option except for a prison term and a long prison term. And sadly, you've been convicted of and have committed the most serious crimes possible, and those crimes also require an equally serious punishment. So this is the part where I will consider what I think are the factors in aggravation. I went through those factors in the statute that I look at, and as I'll explain, I find that 5 of those factors weigh against you and in favor of a lengthy period of imprisonment. First, the case itself. I'll discuss that. There was a lot of pretrial litigation in the case. You decided to take your case to a jury trial. I will state and emphasize that I firmly believe it's the right of every person in our country to exercise their right to a jury trial, and they're afforded the full due process of the law. It's been somewhat disheartening to me to realize that there are many people who think that they can predetermine a case and somebody shouldn't be afforded their full rights of due process before they are convicted of a crime. Well, I didn't make all of the rules that govern criminal cases, but I took an oath to uphold the rules that are there, and I make every effort to ensure that people's due process is protected because that's an important duty of mine. Everyone has a right to be presumed innocent, and everyone in a criminal case does have a right to a jury trial. Sometimes I feel like maybe too many cases settle, and there should be more trials because it's a right people are entitled to exercise.
Interesting. I didn't remember that he said that, but boy, in the wake of so many pleas have been happening recently. We've talked, my God, in the wake of our huge series on pleas, this is interesting. Wow. I guess it was the right choice to listen to my gut, right? When I was like, I feel like we need to go back and watch this and that there's going to be a lot of relevant material, and sure enough.
One in a criminal case does have a right to a jury trial. Sometimes I feel like maybe too many cases settle, and there should be more trials because it's a right people are entitled to exercise. You exercise that right, and I in no way hold it against you that you decided to have your case determined by a jury. That's your right, and it does not impact or influence my decision in sentencing. Before trial, I did not delve into all of the evidence or facts of this case and only address those when necessary to make rulings on motions, because I wanted to keep objective through the proceedings and remain impartial. You were afforded all of your due process in this case, and ultimately, after presentation of the evidence, a jury did find you guilty on all counts. I bring that up now because when there is a trial, I learn and see all of the facts along with the jurors. And that's a different scenario than when someone enters a plea and I'm only allowing argument in a sentencing and not sitting through the evidence as I did here. Having considered all of the evidence that I saw at trial along with the jurors, it's been a difficult task for me to narrow down and articulate all of the aggravating factors because really there are so many here.
Yeah.
Murder is the most serious offense. And the most unimaginable type of murder is have a mother murdering her own children, and that's exactly what you did. You were involved in and guilty of conspiring to murder another group of children's mother, Tammy Daybell, who had children of her own. And despite the jury convicting you with overwhelming evidence, you still sit here before the court today and said you didn't do it. You came here to East Idaho, where I've spent my life, and moved here from another place already with plans in progress to make your children disappear. The evidence bore that out at trial. You removed your children from their home in Arizona, alienated them from friends and family, got rid of JJ's service dog. You moved to Rexford, a community.
I appreciate that he mentioned that about JJ's dog, right? Because he didn't have to. And you can tell that that was something. I mean, there's a lot here that he could have mentioned in terms of all the things that she did that showed her planning it ahead of time and all that. And I find it really moving that he mentioned the dog, because you can see that that was something that was especially important to him.
Where you could find 1,000 random families to take your children, and you brought them here to murder them. You had so many other options. You could have gotten divorced. You could have found someone to take care of those kids. But as the state was able to prove at trial, you chose the most evil and destructive path possible. You killed those children, according to the state's theory, and I believe it, to remove them as obstacles and to profit financially. You justified all of this by going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole, and clearly you are still down there.
Yup.
While you were enjoying your new life in Hawaii, countless law enforcement officers, family members, and volunteers were searching for your children. And I don't think to this day you have any remorse for the effort and heartache you caused for others who looked for
the opposite. She's like, everyone's better off. Like, I made everyone happy.
When you knew where they were and knew they were dead. They were found dead, burned, mutilated, and dismembered, and buried like animals. After you knew they were dead, you collected public funded assistance payments meant for them. And that was blood money you kept for yourself.
Blood money.
And that's the grand theft charge you've been convicted of. Your sister, your son talked to you, begged with you while you were in the jail during phone calls I heard at trial. And those were very sad and difficult calls to hear. And you didn't provide any assistance or comfort to them. During the trial, when the evidence came out about how these children were found in the state they were in, you wanted to be excused and not have to watch the evidence.
So for anyone who didn't watch this trial, when they went to go show the autopsy pictures to the jury, and only the jury would see them, she put on a whole show. Again, we didn't hear her speak or anything, but what we knew was all of a sudden court wasn't planning on taking a break. It was like really sudden, and like no one knew what was happening. And then we found out later what it was, is that Lori like faked, funny, right? Because now it's like she did the same thing in Arizona. She like feigned illness, like she like acted like she was going to pass out or throw up, and like she tried to be excused for like the entirety of the day or whatever because she didn't want to look at the photos. I'd forgotten about that. And then they determined that she was not actually ill and that she was just trying to get out of having to look at what she did.
We're fine to let all the other people in the courtroom, including the jurors, have to bear through that.
Right, Kane?
However, I ruled that you did have to sit and watch and see the result of your heinous crimes. The jurors in your case fulfilled their duty admirably. All 18 jurors we had, because we had alternates, went through the entire trial and faithfully fulfilled all their obligations and all the instructions. So we were able to get impartial jurors who weren't already tainted by pretrial publicity to decide your case. And I do thank the jurors publicly for the service they rendered. Those jurors, I noted during the trial, were very good at keeping their emotions in check and keeping stone-faced.
I can only imagine the amount of therapy that they all needed after this. I don't know how, I mean, people that have seen countless trials, like, you know, people who are in the gallery, right, that are reporters and whatnot, that have seen every type of autopsy photo. For anyone who didn't follow this trial, this was, everyone that reported on it said they'd never seen anything like it with these autopsy photos, and that everybody was on the verge of many things. And just hearing the descriptions of it, I was very much concerned for the jurors, and I just hope that they got proper counseling and therapy and whatever they need afterwards, because, you know, it's like jury service is already a service, right? But when you think about the toll that some of this stuff can take on someone's mental state and emotional state and psychological state, that could affect them the rest of their lives. I mean, that's like the most you could possibly ask of someone. I mean, it goes beyond doing a civic duty. You know what I mean? And I just hope that they are okay. So
Supposed to do and be objective until the case is done and submitted. However, I did note at certain times during the trial, such as when there were videos and pictures shown of you in Hawaii at this time frame when JJ and Tylee were lying in shallow graves. The disgust on the faces of those jurors was evident, and shocking revelations about what happened here just kept coming through the trial. The crime scene was a horrific thing to have to review, and there's images that I will never get out of my mind. And I'm just looking at the pictures. Law enforcement officers who had to deal with the aftermath of what you did, I'm sure were traumatized. And I know it was traumatic as well for the jurors who had to sit through and see the photographs of these dead and mutilated and buried children.
Ugh.
For those people who loved and cared about JJ and Tylee and Tammy Daybell, to have to see those photographs of them through trial of their dead and desecrated bodies must have been devastating. Tammy Daybell was murdered as a result of your conspiracy. She was, by all accounts, a healthy, happy mother and wife through a lot of her life. And you were out shopping for wedding rings to marry her husband while she was still alive. You were planning a wedding to her husband while she was still alive. You haven't shown any remorse for any of those actions. And she ended up being murdered, buried, had to be disinterred later so an autopsy could be performed in order to prove the evidence of what you had done.
Wow.
She didn't deserve any of that.
Well said, Judge Boyce.
You took her life away. You destroyed that family, fractured it to the point where, in the information I've had through the PSI, there are relationships that will probably never be mended that have rippled as a result of what's happened. JJ and Tylee, of course, 7 years old, 16 years old, were separate people whose lives were cut way too short because of you, never got to grow up and be adults. The family and friends who have provided their impact statements, of course, have stated it better than I could about who they were. And it is a loss for everyone that you took them away from this world. And it is the most shocking thing, really, I can imagine, is that a mother killed her own children and you simply have no remorse for it. Even sitting here today, there's no remorse for what you did. After all of this evidence through trial, you haven't shown any remorse. You haven't said you're sorry. You haven't done anything to seek leniency from this court. There's been a lot of people during trial and here who have explained the devastation you're responsible for, and you forever altered the lives, not in a good way, for many, many people, destroying family relationships, taking people away that were loved, cared for, and needed. You may not believe to this day that you've done anything wrong, and you still may think you're justified by your religious beliefs for what happened here. I'm not here to judge that, but I don't believe that any God in any religion would want to have this happen, what happened here. And your crimes are heinous and egregious, and that alone can constitute a major aggravating factor that requires me to impose a serious length of incarceration. So after weighing all those factors, I need to in aggravation, I find that the sentences I'm about to impose will serve the interest of justice by, number one, preventing you from ever doing this again, that they will not depreciate the seriousness of your crimes, will punish you appropriately, and will serve to deter both you and others. So that concludes the aggravating factors the court considered. At this time then, I am prepared to pronounce sentence. Mr. Thomas, Mr. Archibald, and the defendant, would you please rise for the pronouncement of sentence? Based on all the relevant circumstances, including the evidence and recommendations presented in court today, it's the judgment of this court. Ms. Vallow, you'll be sentenced as follows. I'll first note I'm going to take up the counts out of order as I want to address the substantive murder sentences first. So on count 2, the charge you were convicted of, the first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan, you are sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. On count 4, the charge of the first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow, you are sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate life imprisonment sentence with no possibility of parole. I'll next address the 3 conspiracy counts you've been convicted of. Note under Idaho Code 181701, the punishment for those crimes is the same as the underlying offenses you combined to commit. The offenses you combined to commit was first-degree murder, so those may be punishable also by imprisonment for life. I look at what the appropriate sentences should be for the conspiracy charges. At first, I wondered if they should be as long of a term or serious as the substantive murder charge.
So this is where he has a little bit of leeway. So this is interesting. He actually had to consider this for the conspiracy.
Charges. However, what I've concluded is that these conspiracy convictions merit the same grave punishment for several reasons. First, the conspiracies in which you engaged in have had far-reaching impacts on many people besides the deceased victims. And with what the court's heard, I am convinced that the conspiracy charges also merit the same serious sentence. So on count 1, the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan and grand theft by deception, sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Count 3, the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow and grand theft by deception, sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. And on count 5, the conspiracy to commit the first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell, you're sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Finally, the court will address count 7, which is the charge of grand theft. On that charge, court is going to sentence you to a fixed determinate term of 5 years of prison, followed by an indeterminate term of 5 years of prison for a total 10-year term of imprisonment on the grand theft.
So, okay, so he's going through the sentence. It's a lot. There's so many charges. It's just taking longer. So how would you guys, if you had to try to sum up the what you thought of his sentencing here, whether it be just sort of his perspective or the tone, I'm curious what you guys would think. I think as far as Lori goes, right, the religious theme, right? The religious theme, the martyr theme. There was like the evidence of the factitious disorder imposed on another. And then remember, there was the especially most important one, happy and busy. There was also noteworthy at the very beginning of her speech, that little, like, in my opinion, a little love note, embedded love note to Chad, should he be hearing it, where she, for the first time, said she'd had an NDE, knowing that he would appreciate that because that's part of his whole thing. So, you know, you had her, the ultimate martyr, right? Starting out, I died when I gave birth to Tylee, and then it just went downhill from there. So, but I'm curious what you guys make of Judge Boyce and how he handed down this sentence to Lori Vallow Daybell. Welcome to anyone else who's just getting here. Let's see here. And welcome to Jeff. You be nice, Twiz. You behave. And Plastic Pants. Have you been here before? I can't remember, but welcome if you're new, or you might also be an alias because I know many of you guys have more than an account. But anyways, happy to see you. And then there, speaking of which, we have Not Kane here as well. That's hilarious. Okay, so with all that context, we're going to jump into Arizona, and I wonder how many of you guys have seen it, but very, like, now for something completely different is an understatement, to say the least. So we're going to jump over here, and we're going to jump into, you know, Lori's speech this go around. Actually, we can do this at normal speed. Okay, and then of course the comments from Judge Boreski. So you guys ready? Oh my God, go up there. All right, here we go.
All right. Would the defendant like to address the court or present any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. Can I remain sitting?
Go ahead.
He wants to remain sitting.
Representing myself at these two
All right.
trials was a constitutional right that I exercised. I could not have done so without my team. Annalena Ramirez, my paralegal, Jeff White, my investigator, and Pamela Hicks and Robert Abernathy, my advisory counsel. I acknowledge their diligence and hard work in helping me exercise that right.
So doesn't it sound promising from the get-go? Like, wow, like it's lucid, right? And again, comparing it to Idaho, we have seen her now represent herself in 2 trials in Arizona. We've heard her talk a lot. We've also heard her give interviews. It's like, it's really funny, right? When she was silent for so long, and then we heard that sentencing that we just listened to, and then all of a sudden she comes to Arizona, and now it's like we know very well how she's thinking about things, and how she, anyway, you guys all saw it. So this seems like it's a good place to start, right? Like, she's acknowledging the help, but just classic Lori, right? She's going to take this and use it to get into her theme for this sentencing.
They worked tirelessly, and I appreciate them.
Oh,
Representing myself, I have learned much about the law through this process, and I'm grateful for the knowledge that I have gained. Knowledge is eternal, and it is only love and the knowledge that we acquire in this life that we take with us into the next. I have studied the rules of law,
here we go.
case law, and the like. I was amazed and enlightened as my understandings were completely changed from before I started this
Y'all buckle up.
process. Before this long court journey, I only had basic understanding of the judicial process. I was of the understanding that both parties would be able to get up at a trial and each tell their side of the story, but I soon learned that the rules of law do not allow that.
Actually, they do.
Guys, I've never heard this before, but this is, dude, Judge Boreski wins. He wins. Y'all.
That both parties would be able to get up at a trial and each tell their side of the story, but I soon learned that the rules of law do not allow that.
Actually, they do.
The process is much more complex
Yes.
than that. It is not designed for that, although the Constitution of the United States was designed for that. The rules of law negate most of that.
Oh my God.
As a defendant, I was precluded from calling several witnesses.
I'm gonna have to get the go.
Other witnesses for the defense were precluded from testifying things that they did witness. As a defendant, I was precluded from asking law enforcement specific questions.
So do you guys see where the theme is going on this one? So before we had religion, and now we're getting to injustice.
I was also precluded from admitting documents that the state turned over to the defense as discovery. The founding fathers of this country did not intend for the rules and laws of trial that have been implemented into this justice system to make it impossible for the accused to defend themselves. Their objective was quite the opposite. They advocated for a fair and impartial and speedy trial. It was never their intention for people to be sitting in jail for years and years waiting to be tried while the state continues to try to gather new evidence against them. This is what our unjustice system has become.
You heard her right there, guys. Unjustice system. I love Judge Boreski, dude. Judge Boreski's awesome. He's become one of my favorite judges for sure.
Men and women sitting in jail for years and waiting to be heard. The constitutional right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness thwarted. My case is not unique. There are many here in Maricopa County that have been in jail almost 10 years waiting to be tried.
So now she's got a whole cause behind her. But just wait, guys. Just wait. It goes off the rails completely. Just wait.
The conditions of this jail are not for long-term confinement. You do not have access to direct medical care. You do not have access to proper nutrition. You do not have access to sunlight. You do not have access to decent dental care. In fact, when you have been at Maricopa County Jail for 1 year, they come to your door and offer you a vitamin D supplement because you have not been in the sun in a year. Imagine this for years. It is inhumane. The state of Arizona, according to the laws, since I am a prisoner from another state, only had 90 days in which to give me 2 speedy trials. That's 3 months. I arrived here at MCSO on November 30th, 2023. That is over a year and a half, 20 months specifically. That is over 6 times the amount of time it should have taken for me to have these 2 trials. But Arizona leaves this law up to the judge's discretion, and the judge has the power to extend your trial at his will. Even though the 6th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States proclaims otherwise. 98% of all cases in Maricopa County end in plea deals where the accused plead guilty. And I'll tell you why. It's so miserable in that jail that they plead guilty so they can go to the prison and have decent food, decent sunlight, and
here's the thing. The way that we deep dove the fuck out of plea deals, we know all of the reasons why people will do. This is not one of them, Lori. She could have benefited from watching the 5-part series we did on plea deals. This is literally not one of the reasons. I cannot with her.
And I'll tell you why. It's so miserable in that jail that they plead guilty so they can go to the prison and have decent food, decent sunlight, and a chance to live.
A chance to live?
2% of all cases in Maricopa County that actually do go to trial, of all the cases that actually do go to trial, only 0.2 end in acquittal. That is 1 out of 1,200 people who go to trial go home.
That's actually not the correct stat.
Yes! Here's the thing that I love the most about this. We're going to listen again. The thing that I love the most about this is he says stat. That's not the correct stat. He doesn't say statistic. He says stat. It's like he's literally thinking out loud the way he says that. I love it just so much.
That is 1 out of 1,200 people who go to trial go home.
That's actually not the correct stat.
Is that a system designed to convict you? The rules of law governing trial assure that. As you witnessed in my 2 cases, the judge supports the state to achieve this outcome. So here we are. The state of Arizona has accomplished its intention. 1, to extradite me from Idaho. 2, to convict me. And 3, to add to my ledger of lifetimes. The state used countless taxpayers' money to transport me, house me, millions of dollars to wrongly convict me on 2 charges that they made sure judicially that I could not defend myself against. I know political aspirations, raises, and job promotions were at stake. So congratulations.
Ma'am. Did she not let her advisory council read this and take a little look-see to make sure she doesn't say anything like this? Dude, the audacity.
I know political aspirations, raises, and job promotions were at stake. So congratulations. I was convicted in the media long before I went to trial. We all know that there was no way for me to come to Arizona and get a fair, impartial, or speedy trial. And now that fact has been proven. The state of Arizona brought me here when I was already serving 5 life sentences. Now I will serve 7 life sentences. Will that be enough?
No.
Will that be enough?
Give her more. Just kidding.
I want everyone to.
The way that she repeats it for dramatic effect, like as if she thinks people are going to be like, oh my God, like, what does she think? Here's the thing. She's asking this question twice. Hold on. Let me ask you guys a question. What is the answer that she's either thinking or hoping people will answer to this in their heads? What is the answer that she's hoping people will say to themselves in their heads when she asks this question, not once, but twice? What do you think she thinks people or hopes people are going to say? Hold on.
Now I will serve 7 life sentences. Will that be enough? Will that be enough?
What is it that she's hoping or assuming people are answering that with? Because my actual legit reaction was, no, it's not enough. But it's so funny because it's like, that's a risky question. You're asking it twice. And what is it? What's the best case scenario that she could be hoping for? That's my question. He is awful. Hi, Candace.
I want everyone to know that I mourn with all of you.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I am sorry for your pain. Losing those close to you is painful, and I acknowledge all of the pain, and I do empathize. I feel it too. If I was accountable for these crimes, I would acknowledge it, and I would let you know how sorry I was.
No.
But I have witnessed for myself what it is like to leave this mortal existence and return home. When I temporarily died in the hospital giving birth to my daughter.
I forgot she says that again. Okay. Because again, there's not much here that is at all similar to what she said in Idaho. I forgot she said that here. So she does mention again her having died. She couldn't not say that, could she?
But I have witnessed for myself what it is like to leave this mortal existence and return home. When I temporarily died in the hospital giving birth to my daughter, Tylee. When our spirit leaves our body and we return to the pure energy state in the spirit world, we immediately
Are we going to get to happy and busy? Are we going to get to happy and busy? Let's see.
Longer feel hate, anger, envy, or resentment. I promise you. We come to earth to experience these emotions, but these emotions are immediately replaced by a blissful, heightened sense of peace, love, joy, and well-being. The moment our spirit leaves our body, we feel more alive than we ever did on earth. And we have deep empathy for those we have left behind. We do not want our loved ones to grieve or be sad. We know that they will because that's a mortal experience, but they come to comfort us. We immediately know the minute you leave your body, you are aware of who you are, why you came to earth, and that we will all be together again soon, and that this separation is only temporary. All of the cares and pressures and problems immediately melt away.
Happy and busy.
And after comforting our loved ones, we move on with our eternal life, continuing to pursue knowledge and wisdom and understanding in eternal progression. Heaven is a very busy and happy place.
There it is. Now we've come full circle, guys. I think this says a lot about Lori's mental mind. Shout out to Elaine on that one from W. Heard. The busy part is so, like, it's interesting to me that we've heard her describe heaven a lot, like many, many times. And it's always two adjectives. And it's interesting that I have a lot to say about it. Like, first of all, I think it's interesting that it's only two adjectives. And it's always the same two adjectives. And of all of the adjectives, those two adjectives are happy and busy. I mean, one could do a whole deep dive on what this means. So,
where everyone is engaged in projects that they love to do. That includes Joshua, that includes Tylee, that includes Tammy, that includes Charles. No one there, none of these people are seeking revenge or justice. So although we miss our loved ones, and I do too.
oh, shut up.
I assure you that they are busy and happy
Wow.
and peaceful.
What if, you know what's also so interesting, right? Because usually when you hear people describe heaven, it's like rest in peace, right? Like rest in peace, like the after, like rest in peace. Or like, I mean, I guess happy. I mean, see, but I guess happy maybe you might hear, but busy never, literally never. But like, I don't know, guys. Like this is, it's unique to her. She does sound kind of like Ruby Frankie. I'm sure they had a lot of overlap in their people. She's full, definitely. James, I'm not going to put that comment up, but you know, yep, you're entitled to your own thoughts about Lori, that's for sure. Yeah.
Felt the kind of contentment that they feel now, and I try to duplicate that here. So whether I'm giving 5 life sentences or 7 life sentences, I will continue to try to uplift and help and strengthen those around me. It does not matter where you serve on earth as long as you do it with love. It doesn't matter if I'm given 7 lifetimes or the death penalty like my husband. What things look impossible to man
Tonka, did you hear that? Did you hear that?
are easy for Jesus. Jesus tells us in the Bible not to judge, but this whole entire justice system is just that.
Well, okay. So let me say something about this because she's conflating things. Hold on.
are easy for Jesus. Jesus tells us in the Bible not to judge.
Not to judge. How did Jesus mean that? I'm not, hey, Flash, this is a great question for you. Flash is our resident squirrel Bible scholar. What did Jesus mean? What type of judgment? Because I'm not a Bible scholar, but I would interpret this to be like, don't judge people, like, you know, like don't judge a book by its cover type of thing, right? Don't be judgmental, right? That's how I would interpret it. And like, she's conflating that with judgment, as in the judgment that you have in court by the law, which is completely different, not at all. It's the same word, completely different meaning. What are you saying, Flash? I ignore people when it comes to Lori. She's her favorite. I don't know what you're saying. So right, yeah, she's Jesus' favorite person. Yeah. Okay, repentance, peace, and love. Okay, thank you for that. Judge no one. Yeah. Okay, thanks, guys. So because she's trying to conflate this with the court, and she knows the difference. She knows that this is not supposed to be the same. She knows that the judge who's sitting there, Judge Bresky, and the judgment, aka the sentence, you know, she knows that that word has multiple meanings, and she knows that they're not supposed to be the same, but yet this is part of her gaslighting.
Easy for Jesus. Jesus tells us in the Bible not to judge, but this whole entire justice system is just that. So I want you to watch, because God will show the world great miracles. I will continue to love everyone I come in contact with, and I will turn this battle over to God. If this is God's battle, then the math doesn't matter. 7 lifetimes or the death penalty doesn't matter. God.
That's the second time she said that. About the death penalty. Like, she doesn't care.
God's miracles will abound. When a soldier goes off to war, he is a soldier.
Okay. This is when it goes off the rails, guys. This is when it goes off the rails. Get ready. Buckle up. This is when it goes completely off the rails. Get ready.
Soldier comes back from war, he is a warrior. And Jesus is in the prisons.
Here we go.
He is turning his soldiers.
You guys have never heard anything like this. I hadn't. I'm going to back it up, and I'm going to try not to interrupt it, but it's going to be hard.
He is a soldier. When a soldier comes back from war, he is a warrior. And Jesus is in the prisons. He is turning his soldiers into warriors.
Oh boy.
For the prisoners shall go free. Sometimes victory doesn't look like victory until it's finished. Prisoners who have been told that they will never go free will be free.
Oh boy.
And I want you to expect miracles, and I want you to watch for them, because you will see.
This sounds like a very dangerous scenario.
We fear not what man can do, because
and there's a large group element here. I mean, this is like she's trying to, you know what it is? It's like she's trying to find a new cult thing she can do. And this time she switched it over to what can she do from being in prison? It's like she's trying to start a new cult of like prisoners thinking they're warriors, and like compelling them and like empowering them, if you will, or brainwashing them to, like, this is crazy, and also could be very dangerous depending on how like in real life outside of prison, right? Depending on how influential she can be to people.
victory doesn't look like victory until it's finished.
Yeah, I know.
Prisoners who have been told that they will never go free will be free. And I want you to expect miracles, and I want you to watch for them, because you will see. We fear not what man can do, because God's warriors surround us. When the battle is relentless, and this one has been for over 6 years, remember, God is building his army of warriors in the prison system.
Oh God.
He is turning Sauls into Pauls. When
And
Jesus,
right there, you hear that tone. I don't know what the fuck that means. But I tell you what, you don't have to know what it means. Her inflection, the way she says it, this is where you're really getting into that the type of talking that makes people join cults, right? That when people are perceptive to this, and the way she says it, it's like, you know what that means, right? I don't know what the fuck the saying means, but the way she says it so emphatically is very disturbing to me. And it really gives you a lot of insight into what she could be capable of in addition to like murder, maybe?
Has been for over 6 years. Remember, God is building his army of warriors in the prison system. He is turning Sauls into Pauls. When Jesus is sending his servants into the prisons to prepare his warrior team, we will be there only until this purpose is complete, and then the warriors will walk free.
Oh boy.
We are redeemed by Jesus Christ, so we are free right now. But his chains will break, prison walls will fall, the power and majesty of God will be revealed. When Jesus is ready, he will call his warriors from the prisons, and we will walk free, and we will serve him. I will quote Moroni, the great prophet, from Moroni 8:16, and he says, "Behold, I speak with boldness."
I mean, I just have to say, right? Who thought we were going to get through this sentencing without Moroni coming up, right? One of the main characters for her. So there you go, Moroni.
Serve him. I will quote Moroni, the great prophet, from Moroni 8:16, and he says, "Behold, I speak with boldness, having authority from God. I fear not what man can do, for perfect love casteth out all fear." And in Ether, Moroni says, "And now, if I have no authority for these things, judge ye. For ye shall know that I have authority when ye shall see me, and we shall stand before God at the last day."
I just want to say real quick that who all here, when she was talking about the army of prisoners and whatnot, when I first heard her say this, when the sentencing was happening, I had the same imagery popping into my head, very, very distinctive imagery that I got again here, which is from Lord of the Rings, the army of the dead. Literally, as she's describing this, I literally pictured that. Like, I haven't seen those movies in a long time, although they're some of my faves, but like I've seen it enough times where like I literally pictured that. Like, I can see it in my brain now, and I'm like, oh my God, like she literally describing the army of the dead from Lord of the Rings. I think this is how she finishes it, but what happens after this is really funny.
For these things, judge ye. For ye shall know that I have authority when ye shall see me, and we shall stand before God at the last day.
Do you have anything else?
Nope.
That is probably my favorite part of the whole thing. Judge Boreski is the GOAT of judges right now for this. Dude, the way this ends. Also, I just wanted to say, I love you guys in the Squirrel Chat. James, you're very welcome. And I appreciate your always being here and being supportive and being amazing. I love all of you guys so much. Kane, this was hilarious. Jeff and Shalee will lead these prison warriors. Yes. You know what? It would be very interesting to see what would happen if the three of them, as in Lori, Jeff, and Shalee, had gotten a room with each other. Do we want to even think about that, or do we want to table that for our own sanity? Okay, here we go. Let's watch this again. Hold on. I didn't go back far enough. Yeah, the mic push. Yeah, this is amazing, guys. This is the grand finale. This is her last trial. This is her last chance to make her statements and all this.
These things judge ye. For ye shall know that I have authority when ye shall see me, and we shall stand before God at the last day.
You know what it is? It's not a mic drop. It's a mic push. This is hilarious. And the way she leans back in her chair, you know what? I bet she was rolling her eyes. There's a lot of attitude there, and not in a good way.
Ye shall see me, and we shall stand before God at the last day.
Oh my God.
Do you have anything else?
Nope.
I want to watch it one more time. My favorite literal thing ever right here. The way she says, "Nope." Oh my God, you guys.
Do you have anything else?
Nope.
I lied. I want it one more time. The way he says it, dude, this entire thing. So good.
Shall stand before God at the last day.
Do you have anything else?
Nope.
All right, now we're going to get to Judge Boreski's sentencing. And again, he's amazing. So we're going to have a lot of contrasts between similarities and differences, right? Between him and Judge Boyce, because we just listened to Judge Boyce. And then we're going to get to Judge Hippler at the end.
In this day and age where truth seems to matter little to our talking heads on the news and to our politicians, I'm proud that this trial court and through our jury trials, we draw on the collective wisdom of jurors to determine the truth. As I said in my jury instructions to the jury, it is their job to determine the truth. The defendant spent several minutes talking about statistics and being prevented
And the statistics that were not correct.
from presenting her side, and that is not the truth. Maricopa County is a court of innovation. We virtually screened hundreds of jurors, and we kicked off jurors from service that had ever even heard of Lori Vallow.
And as
So
we know, in a lot of trials, that will not be the standard. A lot of times, as we know, they can say they've heard of the case, but right? He said in this particular, for both of her trials, if anyone said they'd ever heard of it, they were kicked off. So.
She says that she couldn't get a fair trial in Maricopa County. That is not the truth. Your cases involved 24 separate jurors who deliberated and reached verdicts on these two cases. They represent a broad cross-section of society, which means these two verdicts represent the decisions of our community, not the view of a single person, not the view of a single prosecutor, and not the view of a judge. The collective decision-making of juries helps to reduce individual biases and errors in judgment. 12 jurors in the first case unanimously agreed that proof beyond a reasonable doubt established you conspired to kill Charles Vallow. And 12 separate jurors in the second case, again with no prior knowledge of you whatsoever, no knowledge of your notoriety, unanimously agreed you conspired to have Brandon Boudreau killed. Many people have asked why the state bothered to extradite you and bring you to Arizona, given the sentences that you received in Idaho. Trials are not just about seeking accountability or punishment from those who have committed crimes, but to give the victims of crimes justice and acknowledgement of the impact of being a victim.
Again, did y'all hear that? Let me back that up again. And let me just say that there's times when a judge or a prosecutor might say something like this, but be kind of like exploiting it to serve a different purpose, okay? For example, using the guise of something about the victims, but not really, it's not really about the victims, it's about some other agenda, because knowing that if you say it's about the victims, no one will disagree, right? I think you guys know where I'm going with this. And there's a difference, and we're going to compare it. There's a difference in the way you can tell he says this. And also, and again, we didn't watch this whole thing, but we totally can if you guys want to. But the victim impact statements from Kay Woodcock and Brandon Boudreau and other people, right, of Charles's family, and then also the surviving, Brandon Boudreau survived the attempted murder. And like, I haven't even watched Brandon's statement, but apparently it was really, 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 really a tough one to get through for what I heard people talking about. Like, it was brutal. But anyway, the victims in this case were both in Idaho and Arizona were treated the way you want to see victims. Like, they were included. Anyway, my point being that as he says this, can you guys see a difference in terms of how genuine it is and how it's actually the purpose? And we're going to compare that again here in a minute to Judge Hippler and see if there's a difference.
Or punishment from those who have committed crimes, but to give the victims of crimes justice and acknowledgement of the impact of being a victim. Justice demands not only recognition of the pain inflicted, but a firm response that upholds the dignity of every victim harmed by the actions of someone who has shown blatant disregard for humanity. You've left a wake of destruction stretching from Louisiana, across Texas, Arizona, up to Idaho and back again. Anytime a person victimizes a single individual, the ripple effects of their actions extend far beyond the immediate harm. And you have not victimized just a single victim, but many. You've shattered lives, you've undermined trust, you've sowed fear in the hearts of many. I can't imagine what Brandon and his family went through for those months, hiding, Charles's family wondering who's next. Is someone coming for them? Jenny said a lot of the things I was already going to say to you, Brandon. I'll just touch on a couple of them. I had wondered during the trial whether you suffer from survivor's guilt, and she confirmed that for me today. I also remember looking at you in the back of the courtroom trial, and just, you have this look about you of a wounded individual. I hope you can heal someday. To Charles's family, I just wanted to share with you that I'm sorry for your loss. Charles seemed like a great all-around guy. One of the exhibits that was put up during the first trial, I noticed something. He and I share the same birthday. So I'll remember him on my birthday. I've seen many, many cases in my career where someone faces a long prison sentence for what amounted to one split-second bad decision. You are not that person. The amount of contemplation, calculation, planning, manipulation that went into these crimes is unparalleled in my career. Your powers of manipulation are profoundly destructive, one that undermines trust, distorts truth, and can erode the very foundations of healthy relationships and society. The impact of your manipulation has been devastating, insidious, and far-reaching, and perhaps still unknown. One can't help but wonder if Alex died as a result of the extraordinary burdens that you placed upon him. No one will ever know. You preyed on the vulnerability of those around you, JJ, Tylee, Alex, Melanie, others.
Yeah.
And today I heard about Colby.
For anyone who doesn't know, Colby, Lori's son, had like a series of strokes right before this sentencing happened.
You specialized in exploiting the empathy and goodwill of others,
What do you mean
turning
I'm
those
slipping?
virtues
What are you
into
talking about?
tools of control and harm. I think that over time, as a result of being subjected to your manipulation, those people lost their sense of self and their ability to distinguish truth from falsehood. In the face of such profound damage, a long prison sentence is not merely a punishment. It is a necessary affirmation that our society values justice, protection, and the sanctity of human life. You just referenced a Bible verse or a verse recently about the prisoners shall go free.
Here we go.
That is not a literal verse. That is a verse about people that accept Jesus
You know what
can
I
be in
have to
prison and
say?
they will go free when they
You know what I have to say here is he didn't know she was going to say that. So he didn't have this planned, right? He couldn't have had this planned. And he's addressing this in a really, really, I'm glad he's addressing it because it's important. Because again, that could really incite violence in the prisons. So yeah, let's just appreciate that.
referenced a Bible verse or a verse recently about the prisoners shall go free. That is not a literal verse. That is a verse about people that accept Jesus can be in prison and they will go free when they die and go to heaven. But it will take an act of God for you to go free.
Amazing. So he's improvising that, right? Listen to that again. I mean, it gave me goosebumps, guys. It gave me goosebumps. I don't think you have to be religious to appreciate the how to say this. Just this was so appropriate. It's not coming from a place of anger. It's wow. It's just really, this was like really moving to me. And it was just so measured, but also the way he finishes that out, it's like poetic. You know what I mean?
Bible verse or a verse recently about the prisoners shall go free. That is not a literal verse. That is a verse about people that accept Jesus can be in prison and they will go free when they die and go to heaven. But it will take an act of God for you to go free.
Yes.
In short, you should never be released from prison. Eventually, the camera that you seek out so much, the media requests, will lessen over time and you'll fade into obscurity. The state has requested that I find additional aggravation. The court does find that in CR 2021-001704, the offense was committed in the expectation that you would receive pecuniary gain. In the CR 2022-001242 case, the court finds the emotional harm suffered by Brandon and his family to be immeasurable.
Immeasurable.
The sentences on those aggravating factors alone will be justified. The state also asked to find an aggravating factor of a prior felony conviction within 10 years of this offense. However, I'm hesitant to do that just because of the way that statute reads, that the offense had to be committed before the date of the offense on these two crimes, which it wasn't. So the court will decline to find that aggravating factor. However, as I said, the substantial amount of harm to the victims and the victim's family, emotional, financial, and otherwise, are immeasurable and justifies consecutive sentences. Ms. Vallow, what's your position on Ms. Woodcock's restitution request of $8,949.52?
So basically, that's pretty much it. She's not actually facing life for this. I think it's something like life, but with the possibility of parole after 25 years or something, but it doesn't matter anyway. But yeah, this is basically the end of it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to Judge Hippler. I know you guys have all seen it, but there's a reason I wanted to put these side by side. Okay. Like I said, I actually texted Twiz the other night and I was like, I have a great idea for the next live stream. I was really excited about this. It kind of came to me in a moment. I was like, oh, like thinking about just layering this. Lori, again, like I said at the beginning, Lori versus Lori, Judge Boyce versus Judge Borethke, and then Judge Hippler in Idaho and Arizona and all this. And there's been a lot of interesting overlaps. So now we're going to jump. I have it queued up. Okay. So here, because what we're going to get to, because I have not commented on this yet. We've not watched this together. And we're going to watch only the end of it here. But when I first heard this live or whatever, the day that it happened, when we get there, I'm going to tell you exactly what I thought at the time with some of the things that Judge Hippler said. And it's going to make especially a lot of sense, I think, after what we just watched. So here we go.
All right, does the defense have evidence to present today? All right. Does defense wish to make argument today?
Before we carry on, I just wanted to answer this question from Flash about what it is. He said, how come she gets to say this is sentencing? It was, because she's representing herself, right? And it was not in terms of the sentence. It was only in terms of when to decide on restitution. That's all. Which they decide to figure out later, I think. He goes ahead and assigns the highest possible court fines that you can give, right? Which we all will see. And it's like a whatchamacallit. In this case, it ends up not being a whole lot of money. It's more for like the gesture of it. But anyways, okay, let's keep going.
All right, Mr. Kohlberger, you have an opportunity to make a statement if you wish to. I take it you are declining.
I respectfully decline.
And I said this in Kane's chat earlier, but this is what, just for anyone who's like, I'm sure people could think whatever. I'll just say, this is what literally every defense attorney would advise their client to say. If they're not going to make a statement, this is what they would advise you to say. Every single defense attorney would tell you that. So literally, that's what they advised him to say. He said it, and that's what you have.
Well,
okay, so here we go.
Please. All right, let me start this morning by acknowledging and thanking those that have come here today in support of their loved ones. And I appreciate your courage and your strength. And I hope that you are able to move on as best as possible. Thank counsel for the professionalism that they've exhibited throughout this case. It's been my great honor to preside.
I mean, and right already, I'm like, well, that's bullshit though, because remember what he said on day one? I don't want to fucking be here. I'm paraphrasing, but only a little bit. I mean, this pissed me off right off the bat. He literally said, I don't want to start with an untruth. Oh, that's funny, Twiz. I didn't even see that you said that. He literally said, I don't want to start with an untruth. I don't want to fucking be here. I'm paraphrasing, but only a little bit. So, I mean, so you're literally in his own words, this is an untruth. Disgusting.
Thank counsel for the professionalism that they've exhibited throughout this case. It's been my great honor to preside in this case and to help bring,
Lies.
to the extent possible,
Like in your own words, a lie, dude.
some resolution and hopefully justice to this case. During the quiet morning hours of November 13,
Right.
2022, a faceless coward breached the tranquility of 6 beautiful young people.
I mean, again, I'm literally going to explain, like, I'm going to recount what I thought as I heard this live for the first time that I think again now. When he says a faceless coward, I'm like, well, hang on. What about the bushy fucking eyebrow, though? Like, what? What about the bushy eyebrow? Good night, Candace.
And senselessly slaughtered them. 4 of them. Who committed this unspeakable evil was unknown for several weeks, but
Awesome.
due to the killer's incompetence and outstanding police work by numerous local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, the person that slithered through that sliding glass door at 1122 King Road now stands before the world and this court unmasked.
So already,
This
already, guys, just we're like 20 seconds in, the difference in this versus, and we could compare it to any judge at sentencing. And I mean, I'm sure there's people who say worse or whatever, but just in terms of what we just watched, we watched Judge Boyce. So again, an Idaho judge practicing in the same court, right? They're both Ada County. We heard Judge Boyce talking to Lori Vallow Daybell. We heard Judge Boreski talking to Lori Vallow Daybell. And compare just in this little bit, the difference, right? How would you guys describe it?
unfathomable and senseless act of evil has caused immeasurable pain and loss.
The word, I mean, it's like the slithering, though, right? Is like, I wonder if ever any other judges that are like retired or whatever will speak up and comment on this, because I find that to be really a lot of things, just a lot of things.
No parent should ever have to bury their child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the slithering.
This is the greatest tragedy that can be
Like,
inflicted
to me, that's
upon
worse
a
than,
person.
evil monster. We hear that shit all the time. To me, the slithering is so much worse than other things that people could say and did say, actually.
Parents who took their children to college in a truck filled with moving boxes had to bring them home in hearses lined with coffins. The loss this killer inflicted was not just the death of these people's children, siblings, grandchildren, as we've heard today. It has ripped a hole in their soul, destroying a special part of their very essence. Any person who is a parent defines themselves foremost as
Hi,
such.
Amanda. Welcome.
It is their existence and purpose of being. And it has been stolen from these parents. None of us have experienced the loss these victims have in the unspeakable way that they have. And therefore, none of us can, nor should we, question the way in which they have handled their loss. Whether that be in private mourning, removed as far as possible from this media circus, or in front of a camera demanding retribution with the loudest megaphone. I've listened intently to the stories and pain
Loudest
that
megaphone.
have
Who do
been
you think
shared
that is?
today with great awe at the courage and resilience of the surviving family members of those wonderful children. I've listened also to the surviving roommates, both in person and through their friends. And I can't think of how, frankly, courageous they have been despite the hell that they have faced by uncaring people who have come up with all kinds of crazy theories.
You know, I agree with you on this one as well, James, and here's why. Because his tone, if I try to describe it, especially in comparison to what we just watched with Judge Boyce and Judge Boreski, but compare it, even if you didn't compare it, he's coming from a place of anger and hatred, and not a place of sorrow, or, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, and not a place of sorrow or empathy. And you know what the difference is? Feeling compassion and empathy for someone comes from a place of love. And that's where tears come from. Now, yes, can people get so angry they cry? I don't know what that's like, but that's not the type of tears or crying, quote unquote, that he is exhibiting, if you will, are supposed to be coming from a place of compassion and empathy and from a place of love, right? But that's not his tone. His tone is anger and hatred to me. That's just my personal read on it. And so, yeah.
About two kids simply being kids. The parents, siblings, and other family members who have spoken today are designated as victims in our legal system. But going forward, I hope that they can shed that label, as it gives too much power to the evil that condemned them to that role. They are and should be known as survivors, fighters, and foremost as witnesses to the tremendous lives of value and unbounded promise of these four young people. But those speaking today and those who did not speak, but who carry the same burden, this same loss, now carry forward the memories of these now perpetually young people, these forever children. These survivors carry the responsibility of ensuring that the
Very
voices
true.
of these children, Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, are never forgotten, and the positive impacts that they have had on so many lives are never minimized, and that the love they shared, the light that they shined onto others, is forever celebrated. As we sit here today, this case is ending, and we are now certain who committed these unspeakable acts of evil, but we don't know, and what we may never know is why. I share the desire expressed by others to understand the why, but upon reflection, it seems to me, and this is just my own opinion, that by
Okay. The only thing I can say probably that I found positive, the only thing I can say probably that would be a compliment, or not even a compliment. The only thing I appreciated, I guess you could say, of the way he handed down this sentence in terms of, every judge has their own style and how they're going to do it. But the one thing I appreciated, okay, is that he uses, in my opinion. Everything surrounding it, whatever, right, we're going to talk about it, but I do appreciate that he says it's just my opinion. That's like the one part that I think was, I appreciated that.
reflection, it seems to me, and this is just my own
I'm
opinion.
I'm not saying I appreciate what he's saying, but I appreciate that he gave it that caveat, if you will. Just
That by continuing to focus on why, we continue to give Mr. Koberger relevance. We give him agency and we give him
Okay.
power. The need to know what is inherently not understandable makes us dependent upon the defendant to provide us with a reason, and that gives him the spotlight, the attention, and the power he appears to crave.
So literally when he was saying this, you know what came through my mind? I was like, hang on, is he confused? Does he think he's talking to Lori Vallow? Does he think he's talking to Lori Vallow? Like, is he confused? Is he in the wrong? Because, like, again, does he think did he go back to 2023 and think he's actually there instead of Judge Boyce? Does he, like, I found this so unbelievable. And I was thinking to myself, and the reason too, right? Not just because of Idaho, because Lori was having her sentencing around the same time, right? And it's like, you could pick other defendants. She's not the only one. But in terms of what was fresh on my brain and also Idaho, anyway, it was like, you could randomly pick a defendant that's on trial for murder or convicted of murder and just pick it at random. And you'll find that that defendant more than likely would fit this description at least better than Brian Koberger. I mean, really, you're hard pressed to find a defendant who says so little. I mean, it's really rare. This was really bizarre to me. And I don't understand it at all, except that he's trying to find more reasons to like justify that there was no benefit to a trial, including, you know, people, including the victims and the families and whatever, you know, like the people that are the quest for motive, you know. And I think also I think also the wrong question there is being asked if it matters at all, which is not the why, but the how. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We've talked a lot about, prior to the sentencing, even we've talked a lot about motive and all that anyway, you know, on this channel. And I find the thing that surprises me is how much both the state and the judge feel the need to keep explaining it, when it's like, it's either you're going to get that or you're not. Like, either you're going to understand, yeah, like there may not be a motive. Sometimes people just do fucked up. Like, you know, they're like, there might not be a motive, or you'll be like, yeah, you know what? Like in other words, either you're going to accept that there might not be a motive, or that there isn't a motive, or that there could be, but you'll never, either you can accept it or you can't. And no one's going to be able to convince you otherwise. I mean, that's just the truth. And it's like my favorite quote I always say, by Khalil Gibran from The Prophet. And it goes like this: no man can reveal to you aught but that which lies half asleep in the dawning of your knowledge. There's no way that Santa or Judge Hippler or literally anybody all together or separately or whatever can convince people, oh, you know what, motive? Yeah, we don't care about that. And I mean separate from the legally speaking, because we know you don't have to prove motive. I'm talking about like for these purposes, right? There's no way someone can convince you of that by explaining it. And then you're like, yeah, you're right. No, it's not going to happen. And so it blows my mind that yet the amount of effort, and it even carried on into the press conference, blows my mind. And the other thing that blew my mind was that people during the press conference continued to ask questions about it. I'm like, why are we still talking about this? Like, literally, what else dude, it just, I was so sick of hearing about it. And the thing that's crazy too is Judge Hippler devotes so much in terms of like, you know, relative time in terms of his sentencing speech, if you will, the proportion of time that he dedicates to just, again, reiterating what the state was saying, which is, this is really better in the end for the victims. You don't know what's good for you. I know what's good for you. And this whole business about motive is really surprising. It's like a huge majority of this whole thing. And those are just a few of the issues that I have surrounding motive. And I'm just being brief about it to not bore y'all. So.
Yet, even if I could force him to speak, which legally I cannot, how could anyone ever be assured that what he speaks is the truth? Do we really believe, after all of this, he's capable of speaking the truth or of giving up something of himself to help the very people whose lives he destroyed? Rather, I suspect the so-called reason would be dished out in enticing, self-serving, and aggrandizing, untruthful bits, leaving people wanting more information, more insight, and thus enhancing even further the power he seeks to hold. Even if we could get truthful insight into his why, I suspected would not in any way quench one's thirst for actually understanding why in the first instance. Because there is no reason for these crimes that could approach anything resembling rationality. No conceivable reason could make any sense. And in the end, the more we struggle to seek explanation for the unexplainable, the more we try to extract a reason, the more power and control we give to him. In my view, the time has now come to end Mr. Kohlberger's 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
It's time that he be consigned to the ignominy and isolation of perpetual incarceration. I know there has been concern about him collaborating on books or movies or other media projects, and I truly hope that someone does not stoop to affording him this spotlight that he desires in the name of clicks, royalties, or profits.
This is just my personal opinion. I do not see him as someone who will do a book or a movie or whatever. I just don't. Like I said, he's describing to me someone like a Lori Vallow Daybell, right? This is not a person who has wanted the spotlight. This is not a person who's like, anyway, I would honestly be really surprised if he goes forward with a book or any of that stuff, right? I mean, I don't know. If someone were to ask me, do I think he would ever do an interview? I would say that I really still even would lean towards no on that one, if not definitively no. I just don't see that being the case. I could be wrong, but that is at least, if nothing else, the way he has handled this entire case so far from start to finish would give you that indication that he actually does not want the spotlight. He's not out there seeking whatever the fuck. And so if that's an indication as to how he'll proceed going forward, I would say he's not going to do any of that stuff. Yes, are the people in the public that are concerned about it? Yes. But like in terms of, that doesn't mean that that's a legitimate concern just because, you know what I mean? And I will just add, people say this with literally every trial. Every trial. Pick a trial, any trial. The number, dude, at the end of every trial, or as it's approaching a verdict, or as it's approaching sentencing, pick a trial, any trial. The same questions get asked over and over again. Can they write a book? Can they be in a movie? Can they profit from it? Can they do this or that? Can they do interviews? And it's like, I don't know. In other words, okay, one facet of that being that the general public has concerns about that in general for any defendant, even if they're acquitted, I would think there's some people anyways. So it's not like that is specific to him. However, if you look at his personality versus, again, the vast majority of defendants in these trials that we see, he would be an anomaly. He would be in the anomaly of someone who I believe isn't in that realm, if that makes any type of fucking sense. Yeah, Amanda, how are you doing? Actually, I don't know that I've had an update on your post-surgery in a couple days. So let us know how you're doing.
Well, criminal behavioralists should study him away from the spotlight in an attempt to prevent other would-be killers from acting on their worst impulses. There should be no need for that to spill over into the public eye. The great Idaho jurist Edward Lodge was known for trying to find something positive about every person he ever sentenced. And with over a half a century as a trial judge, that was a lot of people. This was often challenging, and I recall in one case he said that the best he could come up with was the defendant had good penmanship.
Okay, and again, this is why we started with Lori Vallow. Go back in a second, guys, in your minds to Idaho. Same court, different judge. And do you guys remember? It wasn't long ago. I pointed out what he said about Lori Vallow. And I'm probably going to forget some of the things. He said that you were, by all accounts, a beloved friend and sister, that you were a model prisoner, that you never caused an issue, that your defense team has told me that you're extremely intelligent. There were other things too. There was like 4 or 5 different things that he mentioned that were parts of her personality. He didn't have to say. Those were not part of the mitigation portion of his sentencing speech. This was just him offering like thoughts on her as a person, as a human person. And so again, the juxtaposition, and the way that Judge Hippler sets this up, he gives this example of, okay, he gives this example as in this particular judge who was like a humanist and a whatever, and always found something good to say about the defendant, that he's giving this example of like, essentially, even for this guy, the worst of the worst of the worst, he still had one thing, and the one thing was good penmanship. And then he decidedly follows that with not anything that could be perceived as a redeeming trait of Bryan Kohberger. Did you guys pick up on this? This is like especially well, and the other thing too, right? He's basically referencing this judge as in this judge set the example. This judge is the way to do it. Like this judge was a mentor, or I want to follow in his footsteps. Like he's saying it as if he should strive to be like this judge. And then he decidedly doesn't do that. And again, just the prime example being, if Judge Boyce could name several, like 4, 5, 6 things about Lori Vallow Daybell that were like redeeming characteristics of her as a person. One of the other things that Judge Boyce mentions is that she had no criminal record whatsoever. The same is true here. If nothing else, Judge Hippler could very easily have just at least said, you have no prior criminal record. That's not even really a personality trait. That's just a fact that normally they mention at every sentencing. And to my recollection, he never brings that up, which is crazy. Like, how biased do you have to be? I don't care if someone pleaded guilty or got convicted or did it or didn't do it. How biased do you have to be, though? Especially when you as yourself as the judge gave an example of what to strive for as a good judge, a learned judge, a great jurist for 50 years or whatever. And you're like, here's the shining example. And then to like decidedly not even do that, when if nothing else, there's a blatantly obvious thing right there. Anyway, I could go on and on. I'm just going to keep playing it.
There's a lot of people. This was often challenging.
Hi, Meg.
And I recall in one case, he said that the best he could come up with was the defendant had good penmanship.
That's true, Amanda.
Truth be told, I'm unable to come up with anything redeeming about Mr. Kohberger
Okay.
because his grotesque acts of evil have buried and hidden anything that might have been good or intrinsically human about him.
He could still say that. Not that I'm saying he could still say that, but what he could have said is this. If he wanted to be like the other great jurists, what he could have said is this.
Anything redeeming about Mr. Kohberger because his grotesque acts.
Hold on. No, I need to go back further. Hold on. Okay.
The defendant had good penmanship. Truth be told,
he could have said, truth be told, or no, he could have, let me back up. He could have said, this particular defendant, I don't know how old he is now, however old he is, right, has no criminal record or whatever, has no violent history, whatever the case may be. No criminal record, whatever, right? And then he still could have proceeded with the rest of it and saying, however, it's outweighed by right? But he doesn't even, anyway.
I'm unable to come up with anything redeeming about Mr. Kohberger because his grotesque acts of evil have buried and hidden anything that might have been good or intrinsically human about him. His actions have made him the worst of the worst. Even in pleading guilty, he is giving nothing hinting of remorse or redemption, nothing suggesting even a recognition or understanding, let alone regret for the pain that he has caused. And therefore, I will not attempt to speak about him further, other than to simply sentence him so that he is forever removed from civilized society. And accordingly, based upon his conduct and based upon the record before this court, recognizing the standards that govern this court's sentencing decisions as set forth in State v. Toohill, I hereby sentence Mr. Kohberger as follows. On count 1, burglary, 10 years fixed, 0 years indeterminate. I also impose a fine of $50,000. Count 2, first-degree murder of Madison Mogan. I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the family of the victim. On count 3,
So that's basically the end of it. I mean, he really, you know, Judge Hippler reminds me of somebody. I'm trying to think of who it is. It's like he's one of those people. I don't know that I can ever picture him laughing or smiling. I don't know that he ever has joy in his life. I picture him as like, and this is just my own interpretation. Maybe he was someone as a kid got like, you know, back in the day, because I mean, he's not that young, right? Back in the day, right? They used to like take the paddle to you in kindergarten and whatnot, like Catholic school, maybe. I don't know. I have this sense about him that like all he knows is like punishment and rigidity and like, I don't know. Even when talking about the victims, again, it didn't come across as compassion or empathy. It came across as hate and rage. And it's just compared to the other judges we just watched. But again, you could really pick a judge, any judge. It's very distinct. And this is separate and apart from whoever the defendant is, right? I mean, I don't know if any of other, if Judge Hippler's other trials have been on YouTube. I don't know if we can watch them. But I'm literally going off of like his demeanor and like also the fallacies in his speech, for example, like contradicting himself and whatnot. And also just how literally what he said in terms of the defendant doesn't make sense, especially when it came to like the wanting notoriety and stuff. It just, so this was, you know, whenever we get to the sentencing, right, it's like, again, the judges all have their own vibe. They have a lot of free reign of what they can say. And like, they're going to do it a certain way and they're all going to differ. And like, I've seen a fuck ton of sentencings and like, this one was really especially like, I don't know. I don't know that I've ever experienced a vibe, if you will, quite like this from any judge of any sentencing, or even just be it before the sentencing, right? Like he's, you know, anyways. So let me see what you guys, yeah, he lacks affect. Yeah, for sure. That's definitely what I get from it. Yeah, but Judge Boyce was very different, though. Judge Boyce was very different. I mean, we watched that. You might not have been here, Heather, but Judge Boyce was very different than Judge Hippler. So let's see here. Yeah, so for any Jeff Devine, I don't know. Did someone mention Jeff in the chat? But yeah, Twin Flames, Jeff and Shalia. Great opportunity to laugh with them for sure. Yeah, the public stoning. Yeah, I totally get you on that one, Heather, as well. Not my thing. Rooting with pitchforks. Yeah. It's that type of sentiment. It is definitely that type of sentiment for sure. Who's the lumberjack? Who's the lumberjack? Are you talking about Twiz? I don't know. Gotcha. Well, and you know, to that end, Heather, like on a more literal note, the firing squad, right? So like, yeah, the firing squad in Idaho would be like the modern version of the public stoning or what have you. So there's that. Who blocked Jeff? I would get a notification, right? If Twiz blocked somebody, I'm pretty sure I would feel like I would. That's right. Lori's judge was respectful, not vulgar. Yes, exactly. 100% he was. Yes. I don't think you can block somebody, James. The only person who gets blocked here, at least so far in this juncture, is Glenn. Okay, right, guys? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I will say also, for a lot of people who say that that whole thing originated around the time that they were doing it just for Brian Kober, I just want to set the record straight. That was implemented way before this crime ever happened, just so you guys know. I've covered all of the legislation around that because we covered it when we went through Chad Daybell, right? With his, after he was sentenced to death. Like, we went through all of this. That whole thing originated before this crime. So for anyone who's like, oh, they brought it back, I've heard a lot of people comment on that. I guess it's mostly mainstream media. I just want to set the record straight just for the sake of it, right? You know, I just want to set it straight that for anyone who's like, they brought back the firing squad just for him, they did not. That's not true. It was in the works for a long time prior. It was years of legislation, and it was already being reinstated before this crime happened. And if anything, it overlapped more with Chad Daybell. Anyway, it just annoys me when people, you know. Oh, okay, James, I see what you're saying. So, but James can't block somebody, or anyone can't, like, in other words, I don't know. He can block him from seeing him himself, but not for everybody, right? It's always funny because I don't know a lot of people that y'all are talking about. But tomorrow we will continue on with the documents. You hid him. I don't even know what that means. Jeff, if you're listening, I don't know. I didn't have anything to do with that. I encourage you to be here, and anyone that tries to, like, you know, we accept everybody here in the Scroll Crew when people are respectful of each other. And anyways, I didn't see Jeff say anything except for, like, he came in and said hi or something. I didn't see anything. So anyway, yeah, I maybe it got removed before I saw it. I mean, if somebody comes in and is rude to y'all, right, I would address it. Same thing as if you guys are rude to somebody else, right? I want everyone to treat each other with kindness and squirrel love, squirrel vibes, right? I know you've said that it happened over, but I don't know that history, right? And, you know, I will say also, for all of you guys who are here, maybe with the exception of Super Planner Girl, Jeff was here long before y'all were. No, I'm just saying, Jeff actually, you know, I remember Jeff popping up, I don't know, over a year ago, probably for the first time. Actually, well over a year ago. Yeah, well over a year ago. It was like last early spring of 2024. So if anything, y'all are the new people. It's Twiz. But I love everybody equally. So that includes all of you guys, and that includes Jeff H. You know, so, well, that I have known you longer, Meg, but you weren't here. You weren't, I don't know if you didn't know I had a channel or what, but, like, I don't think you were here watching or in the chat or anything like that. Because I remember, like, by the time you were around, Meg, I think that most of you guys in the chat who are here now were already like, hey, where have you been? You're late or something type thing. But Kane, it's not, that's not true, y'all. You guys, like, you know, the people that were like the OGs were here for, like, the Debt Be Heard stuff, right? And that does include Fender, that does include Kit Smits and other people, but just in terms of just off the top of my head, Abby Giss, shout out to Abby. Random Girl, some of you guys may have seen her before. Iowa's backyard cam was here tonight, includes Iowa. I'm sure I'm forgetting plenty of people. We had a lot of people showing up for the Debt Be Heard stuff. And then after that, we had Murdoch. Anyways, I could go do a whole trip down memory lane, but whatever. You guys are funny. Right. Meg says, true. I remember Heather saying something like, how come, right? How does it, right. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, it was like, I'm trying to remember. Well, I can't remember the exact order, but anyway, not that it really matters. But it is funny because like I had no idea, and I remember actually when y'all like started showing up, you guys were talking about Jeff, and then I had no idea, and then somebody said Jeff H, and I was like, wait, hang on, wait, what? And I'm like, is this the same Jeff H? Because my brain was like, there's got to be a bazillion Jeff H's, but I had no idea you guys were talking, and I'm like, hang on, I think he's a member of the school, anyways. And then I was like, you guys are talking about the same person. It was funny. I love red pandas. Baby red pandas are one of my favorite animals. So yeah, and I've known Meg and Super Planner Girl for a really long ass time as well from STS and whatnot. But and Super Planner Girl, I guess, was here starting with the Murdoch coverage. One of my proudest things that I've ever done on YouTube, by the way, that whole series. And every time we go back and revisit it, Murdoch is my specialty, I guess I would say. But anyway. But I love, regardless of how long you guys have been here, I love all of you guys, right? I just thought it was funny to note, and I hope you guys appreciate how funny it is that Jeff was like a year plus ahead of you guys in the channel. Just really funny. Just really funny. Heather says, truth is all my friends followed me here. That's really funny. Twiz says, I yelled at Lucy for not telling you about Chelsea. That's funny. The two gray boys. Remember, we have an emoji for them as well, guys. A 10-year-old Prius. What are you talking about with a 10-year-old Prius? Oh, you have like a 10-year-old Prius. Corner armpits. Twiz is special. As I say at the beginning of every live stream, I think it sums it up really well about Twiz that every live stream he gets a special text. He's special. So he gets a special text that literally says special text. And it makes me laugh every time. Every single time I do it, it makes me laugh that I'm even doing this. It's just so, I don't even know. It's special, isn't it? Oh my God. Yes. Hold on. I need this in my life right now.
You also told him that you thought you heard a wildcat, but maybe it was a person or something like that as well?
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say then?
I said when I went outside that there's a house cat that's gone wild, and he hangs around. He goes from hanging around the shop, goes from hanging around the house different times. You might, and there'll be times you don't see him. And he had been around the house. Mm-hmm. And when I went outside, I believe that cat was over there.
It's my favorite thing. And the thing really, the best example of Twiz's specialness is the Down syndrome pit bulls, which is really an otter. That will never be outdone by like literally anything in life. If I start thinking about it, I will just laugh myself into oblivion and get injured. It's beyond, you guys. Yeah, it's gross here as well. Very gross. Wait, what? What are you saying, Super Planner Girl? Oh my God, with the otter, I can't. Oh my God. Oh, you're talking about laughing at the otter dog, right? I get you. I'm following now. Yeah. I mean, it is. Yes. Literally the next morning after that happened, I was getting ready for work and I was like literally like work mode, like thinking about stuff that I'm going to do. And I don't know how, but literally that image popped into my brain of the otter. And I literally fell over on the floor laughing. And I was trying to put like my socks and my boots on and I like fell over. And I'm like, I think I actually texted Twiz about it because I was like legit just thinking about it. And it just derailed me completely. Like, oh my God. Oh my God. And the, oh my God. Oh my God. And the way that Twiz tries to defend it is just great too. It's all great. Twiz is special, like I said. Twiz is special. Oh my God. Oh my God. So for anyone who didn't see this whole thing, of course, as always, it'll be timestamped. We started out with watching Lori's sentencing from Idaho back in 2023. And it was very interesting and for a number of reasons. So we pointed out a number of things. And then we saw Judge Boyce and how he handed down that sentence. Then we took a trip back to Arizona, or to Arizona rather, and we watched her speech there for sentencing, which, you know, we went from religion to like politics being the theme. And then the whole thing about freeing the prisoners was incredible. And then we watched Judge Boreski hand down the sentence there. And then we topped it off by coming back to Idaho, where we started from, and watching Judge Hippler give a sentence here in this particular case. And very interesting, the overlap and just the juxtaposition. Hopefully you guys found it to be either interesting / some, I don't know, fill in the blank. Some of you got, you know, you guys, I think, seem to always have fun being in the chat, which is, I love, and that is amazing. Oh my God, I didn't mean hit play. But hopefully you guys also felt like there was some interesting food for thought here. You know, I'm always thinking of things too from like a more of a philosophical perspective that isn't always, anyway. So for me, I have there's a lot of the reasons why I wanted to do this. And I, you know, I think it just, the way a judge hands down a sentence speaks a lot about that judge and how they perceive things. And it matters, right? Like that's what's so interesting is like how they personally perceive things really matters on like a huge scale, but yet it's so subjective. And like, that's the time when they can be that way, right? Throughout a whole trial, right? They're, you know, supposed to, right, maintain judicial decorum and be, well, you guys know, I don't have to tell you guys. But when sentencing comes around, that is when they have the opportunity really for the first time, and, you know, and it shouldn't be sooner than that, to where they can really let the defendant know what they think and where you get their own perspective and how they view things in life, how they view a lot of things. And so that's why I find it really interesting. It's like the way a judge delivers their sentence, right? It says a lot about them. It's a reflection on them, right? And I just find it really interesting. So anyway, hopefully that kind of makes sense. Twiz is still making excuses for the otter dog. Yeah, right. We don't. Nice one, Twiz. You can keep trying. Also, welcome if we have a new scroll friend. It looks like you might be a friend of Official, who we love. Welcome on in. Sorry that you're getting here right in the end, but hopefully you'll watch on Replay Crew. And we go live all the time, so that will include tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll pick up with the documents on number 25. And like I was saying at the beginning, I've actually not been watching any coverage on these. In fact, I really am avoiding it so that I'm reading and going through and learning things for the first time. So like I'm genuine, like I don't know what's ahead. Anyway, you'll get a fresh, my perspective for those of you guys who want it on as we go along in chronological order. You don't pay for being a mod? What does that mean? I don't even know what that means, Meg. You mean pay? You mean people pay you to be a mod, or I'm not quite sure. Right. I know you missed the thing is, though, is again, because of the time zone, the way that the late night lives used to go, they would bleed into the time that now I have to get ready for work. That's the problem, right? Because I'm getting ready for work at like 6 a.m. my time, which Meg, you're what, 2 hours behind probably? So that's like 4 a.m. your time. Maybe however behind you are. But for me on the East Coast anyway, I'm getting ready for work at 6 a.m. So like the late night lives like would overlap with that. And I'm still teaching as well, right? So I still have stuff I have to do for my students. Basically, I just have like I'm trying to fit like 72 hours into one 24-hour cycle for the most part. But anyways, I should pay you with all the entertainment you provide. Well, you do have co-host status. I mean, you have the wrench and you have co-host status. Come on now. Oh, I don't know. That's weird. Who said that? Not here though, right? I mean, no, I would have kicked them out. Okay, cool. I'm glad you've been here before. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, right. I know exactly. Chan. Well, that's the thing. It's so funny because when he talks about his strategies, right, and it's like he sleeps very little and he fits like a million extra things into one day. Like that's, you guys know that that's always that's been me. That's how I, y'all know I don't sleep very much. And I was doing that before even I started working at the law firm, which is the best job ever. Love it. No, I understand that I miss the late night lives too. I totally do miss it. Yeah. It's like, I mean, I wouldn't even say that it's not like I have other things, I enjoy working and I guess I say working. I mean, I love what I do. So none of it feels like work. It all feels like fun, whether it's teaching or whether it's, working at the law firm. Again, technically, you call it going to work, but it doesn't feel that way. And same thing with YouTube. Everything that I do, I love what I do. So that's what I do basically. Yes, I would expect we'll hear Twiz tomorrow. Twiz, will we be hearing some Twiz reads tomorrow? Will you grace the chat with your presence? Okay, that's fucking funny. Right. I know. I remember Meg on that. It's just another thing that you and Super Planner Girl have in common with both getting diseases from mosquitoes, right? Those are yours from mosquitoes, Meg? Like, that's just so crazy. What are the odds? Beauty sleep. I don't even know what that means, Flash. Oh, that's wild, Heather. Oh, the same exact one. Okay, I couldn't remember. The odds of that are even crazier, right? So I was like thinking like, okay, wow, that's wild. The exact same one. Okay. For some reason, I was like thinking the odds that it would be of a mosquito, but like surely it's got to be two different mosquito diseases, but no, the same mosquito disease. That is wild. Awful. Twiz looks like he might go on strike. I mean, Twiz does what he wants, although who said it earlier? Oh, was it Twiz who said earlier that I keep him on a short leash? Oh my God. Sorry, hold on. Yeah, that was Twiz who said that. I keep him on a short leash. So I don't know. Maybe he won't go on strike after all. Oh, you were here when I showed. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, the courthouse. Just a strike. So yes. So tomorrow we will continue on with those documents. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, we'll do this tomorrow as well. But I had something interesting to show you guys too, related to how they handle plea deals here in North Carolina. As sort of a follow up on that with a specific example, but without giving out any information that would be whatever it's specific to any specific person, but just as like a timeline example. Some other interesting little things I've been looking up and digging up as well that we will go through tomorrow. And what did I write down here? Oh, I was writing down a bunch of thoughts on the potential origin if you will, of why people have this question about motive. Like when they're like, I want to know why, I want to know why. Anyway, I've done a lot of thinking in terms of how to try to put it into words, my understanding of where that stems from in the human psyche. So I have a bunch of scribble scrabble down here where I outlined the distilled version of those thoughts. I don't know if you guys even care, but again, that's sort of my philosophical brain at work, where it's like using logic and philosophy and like taking all this stuff and like blowing it up to understand it, the full scope, and then like distilling it back down. Anyways, whatever, just looking at my random scroll notes over here. So, is Too Fast here? Did I miss Too Fast? If I missed Too Fast, oh, there it is. Yes, hi. It is. There it is. There you are. Sorry. Yes, we finished with Lori. We're actually at the end of this. We watched Lori. It is. I think it might be. I don't know. My opinion. I think there were some interesting things that would be worth watching on Replay Crew. But yeah, we went through the Lori. This was at the very end. This was my plan, was to watch Judge Hippler, just that part at the very end, to just juxtapose it with the defendant and the judge in Lori's case for both Idaho and Arizona. So, but welcome Too Fast. Happy to see you, aka Chipmunk Feet. Cute name. So do Twin Flames meow. I don't have a stream set up. I don't have a thumbnail set up or a stream set up, Kane. Otherwise, I would do a little bit of that. That's so not true. I have people comment in replays. Actually, I want to say something because she might hear this on Replay Crew. Doug's beautiful wife, Amelia. Amelia, shout out to Amelia. As an example, I want to read you guys this wonderful comment that she left that made my day the other day. And it was on Replay Crew, Kane. Yeah, and I'll also no dogs left behind. Also watching on replay, but I'm going to read you guys what Amelia said. Because shout out to Amelia. Girl, this case has been beyond heartbreaking, frustrating, and honestly just emotionally draining. Like normally I let my husband do all the online debate / chatting and whatever he does. He's built for internet debates, and I'm built for online shopping. Like give me a cart and a promo code, not a court transcript and a headache, laughing face. But the past month I've been knee deep in comment sections, and phew, people are exhausting. Crazy face. That said, you've been absolutely one of my absolute faves to follow. You actually make sense, don't sound like a conspiracy parrot, and you keep it real. So thank you for being a little light in this legal circus. And I just absolutely made my day. Thank you so much, Amelia, for that comment. And also, in addition, thank you for proving Kane wrong. Because there are plenty of people who watch on replay and they leave comments, or they come in the chat and they say they've been watching on replay. So Kane, you can just, you know what you can do, Kane? Wait, I've got a clip for this. Hold on. We've got a sound clip for this, Kane. Hold on. And I'm saying this out of love, by the way. Where is it? Hold on. Okay, here we go. Here's what you can do, Kane.
Leave your stupid comments in your pocket.
From The Room. If you were there, then you might remember that random quote from my favorite B movie. So anyway, Kane, I love you. I'm just teasing you. So, all right, guys, that'll be it for this one. We'll be back tomorrow for the docs. And I did not even know there was a Happy Gilmore too. I've not seen it. And appreciate you guys as always for being here. I love y'all. Y'all are the best. And yeah, so if you have any other specific requests in terms of things that you think are interesting topics regarding anything that we talked about tonight, or just, anything in general with the law, you guys can always feel free to ask, like even if it's in more of like a philosophical exploration. I say that because that's like literally what I do with myself in my head. And like, I don't know if anybody cares, but if you care, let me know. We can do it. So yes. You're very welcome, Tonka. Twiz was drunk and on the Snake River, by the way, guys. It was the Snake River. The Snake. I also have to say it like that. Anyways. But I love you guys. Y'all are the best. Happy as always to be with you guys and discussing all of these really important issues, and also laughing, because that's really important when we're covering difficult and horrific things. And also laughing is the best. And none of us want to end up like Judge Hitler, right? So love y'all. See you guys on the flippity flop. And for now, squirt.